If you like the story, you can support the author on Patreon. Link is in the description.
Chapter 41, Documentary, 2. Third POV. Documentary, Episode 1. Name, Dr. T. Somatonson. Role, Lead Researcher and Ethologist. Nationality, Indian, from Nagaland, Northeast India. Age, 62. You know, science demands patience. And for us, in those early days of documenting Leo, patience was a strange mixture of dread and fascination, the aged man said with light chuckles that sounded incredibly graceful. After the first encounter, we made a unanimous decision to observe him more closely. Not to interfere, not to tag, not to tranquilize. Just observe. We did not get permission from the higher UPS, we did not have funding to document another male lion, but the whole prospect of a thriving lone lion with no tail was just too interesting to simply ignore. Leo's whole existence was seemingly built to intrigue us scientists, he said and carefully folded his arms. And we observed him from the sky. Our drone operator, Ramirez, was the sole person responsible for documenting Leo in the early days, he said. The scene changed to show footage of the crew launching a drone in the sky. Ramirez, the young Mexican, was controlling the drone and flying it in the sky with obvious expertise. We outfitted a silent drone with long-range optics and thermal imaging, keeping it high enough so that it wouldn't disturb Leo and hopefully he wouldn't even notice it. The scene changed again to show from the drone's camera. The aerial shots of Leo as he wandered around the Serengeti played one after the other. Some showed him stalking through the grass like a shadow, while others showed him walking along the river banks. The scene showed days passing, the sun rising and falling on the horizon. The drone kept its trail on Leo as it observed the lion and everything he did with great detail. As you can see, he wandered endlessly, Dr. Tonson said. He had no pride, no siblings, no prey, no destination. He seemed to be wandering aimlessly around the Serengeti region. Even when he came across other animals, he never hunts them. The only thing he did was watch and observe. The camera showed Leo walking through the Serengeti and stopping to watch a family of warthogs pass him. He did not charge at them, simply raised his nose to remember their scent before moving on. The footage changed to show a montage of Leo doing God knows what all around the Serengeti. He would sit down and gaze at a cluster of zebras grazing and then disappearing into the horizon. There was a scene of him tracking prey, smelling animal dung and digging at rabbit holes. He watched crocodiles in the rivers, watched jackals scavenge and fight for food. He followed groups of birds flying in the sky and would often pick high elevated places to sit down and relax instead of going under a tree. Of course, after a few days of watching him do the most mundane of things, we finally came to realize what he was doing, Dr. Tonson said and took a small pause. There was a brief tension in the air, and then the doctor revealed it rather dramatically. Leo was studying the land and mapping it. The screen split, on one side was the drone paths tracking Leo's movement over the course of 4 days, and on the other was a clean visual of Serengeti terrain. A field team used GPS overlays to track his movement over 4 days. The result was baffling. The screen showed a glowing line that traced Leo's movement like a spider web, starting from his first known location and spreading outward. A heat map began to form, revealing the slow emergence of a wide-ranging mental map. If you look at the map, we have highlighted the paths Leo had taken in the duration of 4 days. One thing you would notice immediately is that he never took the same path twice. He carved a new terrain each day and never repeated his steps. He was learning the land, he said as if revealing a big secret. Cutting to a new clip, Leo stops by a hollowed log. He sniffed it and tapped a paw inside, then continued walking. Another clip showed him drinking briefly from a small stream. He looked around and then simply walked off again. He never lingered in one location for too long. It was almost like he was logging landmarks, he said. The screen finally cuts to Leo standing still in the open plan. His head was facing up to the sky with closed eyes. His fur danced at the tune of the breeze, his nose twitching lightly. His tongue would come out now and then, as if he were licking the air. You can see here that Leo is observing the wind direction at certain times of the day. It is impossible to predict wind currents, but you can get used to it. He was learning the pattern of the wind of this land, he said. That goes beyond just instinct. What we are witnessing is an advanced cognition from a wild animal. As someone who had studied animal behavior for decades, I could tell you that lions do not behave like that. If you imagine a lion, you would instantly imagine them sleeping or cuddling with the pride in their free time. They only made such big moves when they were on a hunt or looking for prey. But we recorded Leo watching animals he didn't intend to hunt. He wasn't interested in the prey. He was watching their behavior. Their timing. Their escape routes, he said, and the recording he mentioned played on the screen. To be completely honest with you, Leo is showing behaviors more similar to tigers than lions. Tigers are solitary and are known to map out their surroundings similarly to what he is doing now, Dr. Thompson said, and gave a thoughtful look at the empty space before he burst out laughing. It's always a pleasure to be working with Leo. You never know with him, and that's what makes him so unique, he said. There was a pause as different clips of Leo wandering the Serengeti in his youth played on screen. It allowed the doctor's words to settle in the mind of the viewer. But soon after that came the most puzzling footage yet. By the third evening, Thompson said slowly, we noticed something even more peculiar about our subject of observation. A wide shot revealed a large copy, rugged, isolated, and elevated. It was like a small island in a sea of green grass. Leo arrived at its base, climbed to a familiar ledge, and lay down. 3 different clips of Leo staying in one of the caves in the afternoon were shown. The timestamps read Day 2, 1842, then again on Day 3, 1903, and finally on Day 4, 1837. 3 nights in a row, he came back to this spot and always slept in the same place as if he were returning to his home, he said. The scene showed other lions roaming around before crashing in random shades and sprawling under different trees. Most lions rest wherever they collapse. They don't care where they sleep, as they are the apex predator. They did not need shelter to protect them from anything. They will sleep under trees, in ditches, behind termite mounds, etc. A pride of lions may have a specific spot to hang out, but it's never truly a permanent home, he said. But Leo decided to make this his home and he stayed here for a long time. He was even willing to fight to the death to protect it, he said and then chuckled. The screen showed Leo hanging around the copy. How he would jump from boulder to boulder, stretch peacefully on the rocks and even climb on one of the trees and sleep on the branches. At this point, we were invested in Leo. A few days of observing him made us discover more things than our original project did in a year. It was no longer just a curious observation, we were hell-bent on studying him and understanding him, he said. And then on the 5th day came the moment we have all been waiting for. Leo left his home early in the morning, but this time, there was something different about him. He walked out with his head hanging low, a contrast to him constantly looking around and observing his surroundings when he went anywhere else. Unlike other days, this time he had only one purpose, he said and then showed a smile. On the 5th day, Leo went out to hunt. And on this day many of our questions were answered, but we end the day with more questions than ever. Chapter 42, Documentary, 3. Third POV. Name, Hannah Park. Role, Zoologist and Big Cat Specialist. Nationality, Korean American, from Seattle. Age, 34. Okay, where do I even begin? Hannah asked with a wide, excited smile on her face. She rubbed her palms together and gave a mischievous look at the camera. She was acting as if she was about to reveal things that would absolutely blow the viewer's mind. Like it had happened to her and now she was giddy to see other people experience the same thing. In my career, I've studied Bengal tigers in Sundarbans, mountain lions in Wyoming, Asiatic lions in Gujarat, and even urban leopards in Mumbai. But nothing, and I mean nothing, could compare to studying Leo, she said. Okay, let's just begin with the most obvious issue, which is that Leo doesn't have a tail, she said. The documentary played slowed footage of Leo walking across the open savanna. His gait was low and measured. His spine was tight, and his muscular shoulders rolled hypnotically. Each step he took seemed to put a heavy tension on the ground. He was oddly majestic in the way he walked. Like he was aura farming with every single step he took across the savanna. This was because of the deliberateness and clear purpose in his steps. If we compare it to a human, it would be like a model running down a runway. There was a charm with those intended steps, which a natural gait lacked. Hannah's voice overlaid the footage. For most lions, losing a tail is a death sentence. The tail of cats, especially a big cat like lions, played a vital role in balance and movement, she said. The screen changed to show diagrams of typical lion locomotion, showing the tail acting as a rudder during sharp turns and sprints. In feline biomechanics, the tail helps correct momentum, especially in the final burst of a chase. You'll see cheetahs whip their tails during high-speed turns. Even house cats use them when leaping onto narrow ledges. Without it, most cats would falter in pursuit. The screen cuts back to Leo walking in the savannah. He encountered a rocky terrain, so he jumped over the obstructions and landed on a piece of log. He was able to balance himself on top of the log before jumping onto a small boulder and finally jumping back down on the ground. He did all this elegantly and firmly, as if he had glue on his paws, like Spider-Man. Even without a long tail, you never see flaws in his movement. But unlike most other lions, Leo compensates. And he did so brilliantly. The screen overlays heat maps of Leo's leg and spine movement during high-speed clips. He plants his front paws wider apart than a typical lion. His center of gravity shifts slightly forward. His claws dug into the earth, and he had a habit of utilizing at least 2 paws with every high-speed movement he made, she said. And we were able to realize all these from watching him hunt. Let's take us back to 10 years ago when researchers first saw Leo in action. It was the 5th day since we encountered Leo, and on that day, Leo was hunting a herd of impala, she said. The scene changed to show the full video of Leo hunting the impala. Hannah's voice overlaid on the footage as she explained what was going on. Leo stalked the herd of impala, but then, before he could start the chase, they felt danger and then moved away. Leo just remained in his place, stumped as he watched the impala move to another area. He waited for another opportunity and then flanked them. He stalked them slowly and even more carefully this time. His body was barely visible even to the camera that was pointing right at him. He moved through the grass like a shadow. He moved only when no one was looking. But even with all his effort, he failed once more. The wind changed direction and revealed his scent. The herd bellowed and then ran away further than ever before, leaving Leo to sit alone and without any prey to feed on. As you can see, Leo initially had trouble hunting the herd of impala. It was obvious to us that Leo was new to the land and he was not accustomed to hunting the prey here. From his behavior, it looked like he had easy prey so far in his life, she said. But here comes the most interesting thing about Leo. He had a trait that stood in all these years, and that was his ability to adapt, which was a direct consequence of his fascinating intelligence, she said. In the footage, Leo walked away from the open plan and headed towards a high elevation. After that, he just sat there and observed his prey. At first, the researchers thought he had given up and they allowed a drone to fly over him to get better footage. It shows Leo overlooking the plains, sitting still, watching. Lions are ambush predators, they are not planners. A pride will straight guys to a degree, but even that was limited. A lone male lion planning on his hunt? That was unheard of, she said, but that's exactly what we witnessed Leo do. In the following scene, we witnessed something that truly boggled our minds. Leo, after realizing that the typical lion hunting strategy was not working, came up with a new strategy, she said, and then the video showed just that. Leo, instead of stalking and trying to sneak up on the herd, moved to another terrain completely. He had studied the pattern of the herd and predicted where they would graze next. And then he planned an ambush there. There was no stalking, he was just laying there and waiting for the prey to come to him like a snake. And the plan was successful. Leo adapted his strategy and managed to get an impala, securing his food. This striking intelligence and adaptability reminded me of one other animal, she said, and then the scene changed once more. This time, it was in a completely different environment and not the savannah. A montage began, showing wolves hunting in packs. It showed them strategizing together to catch prey, unlike most predators on the planet. The wolves did not have one hunting style, they adapted depending on the prey, the climate, and even the time of the day. Wolves are known for predictive hunting, forecasting where prey will be, not just where it is. They study patterns. Leo is showing identical mental processing. That places him on a very short list of predators that include wolves, orcas, and yes, even humans. She said. With this, the biggest question on how Leo was able to hunt his prey without a tail was answered, she said, and leaned back in her seat. It's simple really. A lion without a tail cannot hunt like a lion. So Leo hunts like something else, unique to his own style. If I had to give a name, he hunts like a predator, not a lion, she said. She paused for a long time and seemed to be in thought. Her eyes stared at the empty space and her lips twitched as if she was preparing to say worse. It's almost like he knew he could never succeed and thrive as your typical lion, so he re-engineered himself in any way necessary in order to win and thrive. He learns from his surroundings, and I think that's why we see so many other animal characteristics in him. Name, Dr. Marcus E. Velt. Role, Comparative Anatomist, Big Cat Specialist. Institution, University of Pretoria Department of Wildlife Physiology. Nationality, South African. Age, 47. The camera pans across a dim modern lab. Screens line the walls with muscle fiber scans, gait analyses, and predator-prey movement simulations. The camera stops on a man, his name faded in on-screen, Dr. Marcus E. Velt, one of Africa's foremost minds in comparative anatomy and evolutionary biomechanics. He stood before a suspended holographic image. It was not of a whole lion, but of its inner self. Bones, sinew, muscle layered in faint red and gold hovered in midair, gently rotating. The lion in question was not an ordinary lion. It was Leo. I remember the first time I saw the footage Hannah and her team sent me, Marcus began, his deep voice both clinical and curious. At first glance, Leo didn't look like anything extraordinary, at least, not in the conventional sense. Without all these scans and in-depth imagery, he would simply look like a lion with muscles and without a tail. But beneath that fur and skin lay a biological marvel. He paused, turning to the digital model. A single hand motion brought Leo's simulated skeleton to life, and the lion ran in slow motion. The muscles were shifting and bones were responding like an orchestra of force and precision. He was clean. Clean in the way a well-oiled machine is clean. His movements wasted no energy. His turns were sharp, never loose. His jumps were explosive, he said. Many have claimed that Leo was simply compensating for the lack of a tail, but I disagree. It's not that simple. I don't think we're looking at a lion that adapted to losing a tail. We're looking at an entirely different evolutionary answer. He said. A new footage showed an ordinary lion hunting. The video highlighted the arch of its tail whipping side to side in perfect harmony with the body as it lunged forward. How the tail curved and twisted when the lion took sudden turns at high speed. In normal lions, the tail does more than people assume. It's a counterbalance in motion. It is essential when a lion runs, pivots, or leaps. You remove the tail, and you compromise the animal's equilibrium. He said. But Leo wasn't compromised. The hologram zoomed into Leo's pelvis and lumbar spine. Small indicators showed areas where his bone structure thickened beyond what's standard in wild lions. We analyzed his proportions using software that reconstructed musculature based on known feline anatomy. What we found was clear: Leo's entire posterior chain, which includes his glutes, hamstrings, calves, and spinal stabilizers, was hyperdeveloped. It was a direct compromise of the body for the lack of tail, he said. The screen changed to a still image of a bobcat mid-leap, its compact, tailless frame twisted mid-air, powerful hind legs propelling it like a spring. Leo's build reminded me of the bobcat lynx rufus. A tailless predator that thrives in rocky, elevated terrain. Bobcats don't run down prey. They explode, short bursts of energy, vertical pounces that can reach heights of 12 feet, and sudden lunges from blind spots. Their muscles are dense, their spines are short, and they carry strength where it counts. He said. Now look at Leo. A crossfade showed Leo jumping effortlessly up a copy, his home. It was the same jump from Hannah's footage where his entire body compressed and extended like a coiled spring. That is not lion-like behavior. That's bobcat logic in a lion's frame, he said. He pulled up another cat without a tail. This time it was a domestic cat with humans around him. And then there's the Manx cat, a domestic breed known for being born without tails. Over generations, Manx cats developed an unusually fused sacral region and broader pelvises to account for their center of gravity. Leo's pelvic X-rays show surprisingly similar spread, broader iliac wings, thicker sacroiliac joints. He pointed to the hologram again as it displayed the adapted pelvis. Then, the model peeled back its skeletal frame and revealed the muscle fibers. Here's what really astounded us. Leo had hypertrophic growth in all the major muscle groups tied to propulsion, quadriceps, semitendinosus, gluteus maximus, and even in the spinal erectors. These muscles weren't just active. They were developed. Like a lion that trains every day of his life. Footage from Hannah's drone reappeared, showing Leo walking through the plains. Leo's every step carried a quiet, unnatural power in the shoulders and hips. This level of hypertrophy doesn't occur from regular hunting. It's the result of constant, high-load physical effort. And believe it or not, that's what we observed Leo do over the course of the years. He is a lion who trains like a gym bro, he said. The camera cut back to Marcus, now seated in front of a screen that displayed a visual timeline of Leo's growth. Speaking of the gym, Another question we asked when we found out Leo was young was how he became so big at such age. When they first began observing him, he was around 2 to 3 years old, technically still maturing. And yet, he had the frame of a 5-year-old. Denser bones. Fuller mane. Ridiculously thick limbs. He was an adolescent in a giant's body. Marcus leaned forward, more animated now. The answer to that question, after 10 years of research, is, we don't know. We never found out the exact reason, but we have theories, he said. We considered 3 possibilities. First, the hormonal profile. Elevated testosterone, likely genetic, would accelerate both bone density and muscle development. Testosterone also enhances aggression and boldness, which we see in Leo's behavior later in his life, when he became fully matured. Second, nutrition. He must have had access to extremely protein-rich food since cubhood. It's possible that he was either a dominant scavenger early on or raised under unique conditions where food was never scarce. That kind of consistent energy intake changes growth permanently. Third, and this is purely speculative, Leo might be carrying a rare mutation affecting the IGF-1 pathway, insulin-like growth factor. This hormone regulates growth in all mammals. Higher levels in early life result in larger adult size, especially when paired with testosterone, he said. It could be any one of these or all of them combined. We are not sure. And finally, Marcus began and stood up. He walked to another part of the lab where 3 ancient predator skeletons stood mounted in full display. He smiled at the camera. Eventually, I realized that no modern lion, tiger, or leopard could serve as a fair comparison. He placed a hand gently on the thick skull of one, a giant, broad-shouldered skeleton with fangs longer than any cat alive today. This is Smilodon fatalis, better known as the saber-toothed cat. And this? He pointed to a second frame, taller and leaner, is Panthera atrox, the American lion. It is the largest feline to ever exist. The big ones are estimated to be 4 meters long and 500 kilograms. He stood back and looked at the final skeleton. It fit right in along with the other 2 prehistoric skeletons. He made a thin smile, and the last one is an artificially created skeleton of Leo. You want to know what Leo resembles? These. He doesn't look like something out of today. He looks like an echo of the past, a beast born in the wrong age, sculpted by freakish circumstances and powered by will. He looked directly at the camera now. But he's not fantasy. Every element of Leo, every trait and behavior, exists in nature. We just never thought they'd all show up in the same animal. Chapter 43, The Syringid Pride. Third POV. The Serengeti night was a blanket of stars, spread thick and glittering across a sky so vast it made even kings feel small. Crickets sang in the grass. A breeze danced through the acacias, rustling leaves like whispers. And beneath one such tree, the Syringid pride were sprawled around. A pride of 30 members strong sleeping in one area was a sight to behold. These animals were basically the rulers of the region, the royal family of the savannah. It was early in the night, but most of the members were already asleep. A few who were awake were also lying around and cuddling with their pride members. Lions were known to be very social animals, so cuddling together like this was a greatly appreciated bonding time. Among those that were awake, a few restless cubs were included. Lion cubs were always a ball of energy and activity, so even while most adults were sleeping, they were running around and chasing each other. Their paws thudded softly against the dry earth, and they released cute juvenile sounds as they played fight in the darkness of the night. They played without a care in the world, but in every passing moment, they were never in danger. Whenever they were about to wander too far into the night, a deep voice would call them back. Come along, cubs, stay near me, a deep voice vibrated softly in the night. It came from one of the kings of the Syringid pride, Baraka. He was a giant in muscle and mane. Baraka was the biggest among the 3 kings, his sheer size would make the current Leo look small in comparison. Baraka could crush bones with ease, but if you saw the current look on his face and the gentleness in his tone, you would never guess he could harm anything in the world. With his smooth mane and thick fur, which was paler than any lion should be, he was the definition of a friend-shaped killing machine. He was the gentle giant. The cubs came bounding back at Baraka's call, like little balls of fur bouncing through moonlit grass. They skidded to a halt near his paws, panting with grins on their faces, only to leap on him without hesitation. Baraka let out a soft grunt as 2 clambered onto his forelegs, another biting playfully at his tufted tail. One of the more daring cubs climbed onto his shoulder and slid down the side of his thick mane like it was a hill. The pride of a king was not pleased, but the love of a father made him tolerate them. In the end, he couldn't help but smile and play along with them. "Is this how you treat your king?" he asked with an amused huff. "Yes." One of them shouted proudly, swatting at his whiskers. "Then I'll have to punish all of you," he declared before swiping gently with his massive paw. He was careful not to let even his claws graze their soft pelts. The cub dodged and laughed. One lioness lifted her head nearby, watching with sleepy amusement as Baraka entertained her offspring, then lay her head back down. The king was a great babysitter, and every lioness appreciated him for it. They were able to get peaceful sleep without worry. The last king of the Syringid pride also looked towards Baraka with half-lidded eyes. He lay not too far away from his brother, but you could see that unlike Baraka, no cubs dared approach him. His name was Makalai, and he was the complete opposite of Baraka. His appearance was not majestic or full, instead, his body was marred with scars of battles in the past. He was the fiercest and the most violent of the kings. He was slightly bigger than Roku, so he would be around equal to Leo's current size. His mane was full black with a shorter and jagged appearance. His face also showed many scars. There was even a faint tear at the edge of one of his ears. Makalai was also the one lion who killed the most rogues. Whenever a new male appeared, he would be the first to dive into battle. Sometimes he would kill or drive off rogue males without the help of his other brothers. So Roku being the one to confront Leo, a rogue, was a rare occurrence. The only reason Makalai was not sleeping with the pride was that Roku had not returned. He was not the most caring beast, but he was loyal to those he loved. "Baraka, it's been quite a while since Roku was gone," he said to his brother in a distance. "I wouldn't worry too much about it. Roku is the smartest among us, I'm sure he has his reasons for not returning," Baraka answered while entertaining the cubs with his front paws. Late in the afternoon, the three had done their routine patrol around their territory. But unlike other days, Roku had not returned with them. It was quite normal for one or two of them to come back late, but Roku was rarely the one to do so. Therefore, Makalai was concerned. "Aren't you worried?" he asked again. "About what?" Baraka asked. "You and I both know that Roku will be the first to run from a fight he knew he could not win." Makalai thought over that, and he agreed internally. He became a bit relaxed after hearing Baraka's thoughts. So he lay down and closed his eyes to rest. A few minutes passed, and their world was still and peaceful. And then, a sound ripped through the night like the earth itself had screamed. Asterisk roar. Asterisk. Baraka's ears shot up, and he looked towards the sky. Makalai abruptly stood up and his face morphed into something hard like stone. The cubs froze, their ears dropped, and their tails found a place between their tail. The joyous mood was gone, and they hurried to hide under Baraka's massive presence. The rest of the pride also stirred awake and they lifted their heads in unison. They were sleeping so peacefully a second ago, but now everyone was on edge. It was because the roar was unfamiliar. It did not belong to any of the three lion kings. A roar was easy to distinguish for lions. Baraka's roar was deep and thundering, Makalai's roar was sharp and tearing, and Roku's roar was always calm and commanding. But the roar that echoed through the land had none of these attributes. It lacked the dignity and elegance of a lion that roared daily while patrolling their territory. This roar was untamed and untempered. It was clear to everyone that this was the roar of a young lion, not a dominant king. But what frightened them was the sheer volume of the roar. All roars sound beastly to humans, but this one did even to other lions. The roar continued 10 more times while the Syringid pride just listened. The two kings were also silent, finding the direction from which the sound came and also analyzing what the unknown lion would look like from his roar. It was not a roar to call others, it was not a roar to defend a territory or to threaten it. It was simply a declaration of presence. The strange lion roared to exist. It was akin to saying, "I am here. I have survived. And I'm not afraid of you." When the roar ended, there was absolute silence. Even the insects made no sound afterwards, there was only chilling silence. In that moment, Baraka pushed away the young cubs with a smile before he stood up. When he stand, the smile and the gentleness were gone. He shared a look with Makalai, and then they both bolted off. The roar came when Roku was missing. It could not have been a coincidence. They ran through the savannah and headed towards the direction where the roar came. The ground thudded in the darkness of the night, two beasts made their way towards a common enemy. The sound of a vehicle starting followed soon enough, and then the group of researchers that had been staying beside the Syringet Pride followed the two kings. Baraka and Makalai were used to the presence of the humans and thought nothing of it. Instead, they quickened their pace and ran even faster. After around half an hour of traveling, they finally came to an open plain with no trees around. There, they saw a lone lion walking towards them. They stopped in their tracks and took in the scent of the lion. The smell of blood nearly overpowered the natural scent of the lion, but after careful observation, they realized it was their brother Roku. They bolted forward and reached their brother in a heartbeat. Roku, Baraka was the first to address him. His deep voice rumbled in concern and boiling rage. "Don't worry, I'm fine," Roku answered in a voice that was surprisingly calm considering his condition. "How many were they?" Makalai asked with bared teeth. He could barely contain himself at that moment. "Only one," Roku said, somewhat ashamed. This surprised both brothers. All of them were in their physical prime, it should be almost impossible for them to lose to a new male rogue. "And you lost?" Baraka asked. "No." Roku denied fast, "It was a draw. We both sustained injuries and decided to end the fight." "How did that happen? What did you do?" Makalai came up to Roku in clear aggression. He was angry at his brother for losing such a fight. Roku fought back, his bleeding teeth bore out and flitted towards his brother. He didn't commit to the attack, of course, but it was a warning that he wouldn't let anyone talk to him in that tone. He had lost enough dignity in one night. "You didn't see him. You didn't see how he fought?" Roku growled out. Both brothers snarled at each other, but Baraka soon came between them. His massive size worked to cool down their aggression. Even though both were fierce, it was almost instinctual to submit to the bigger beast. "Let's go home, the rest of the pride will be worried. We can discuss what happened in detail later," he said. "What? Aren't we going after the rogue?" "If he is injured, as you say, we could kill him right now," Makalai said. "Don't bother. The rogue will have run away by now. We will just be wasting energy in the middle of the night. Let morning come, and we will continue this affair," Baraka replied. "Leo," Roku said suddenly, causing both brothers to look at him. "His name is Leo," he said and walked past them. The two brothers stared at the back of Roku before they followed in silence. If the name is acknowledged, it means it was not just a rogue. It was a proper challenger. A threat in their kingdom. Chapter 44, Next morning. First POV. I have absolutely no intention of leaving my home. I knew it was stupid considering the kings could return and jump me 1 vs 3, but there was something in me that did not want to leave this at all. The copy was mine, I have thought of it as such already, and leaving it now just because I was scared would be like giving away my food. My ego couldn't take it. It was one of the main differences between a lion and a human. The sheer disgust at the idea of giving up things that were mine. In all seriousness, I would have to abandon it if it meant survival, but as long as I could, I want to keep making this my home. So when I returned back to my cave, I lay down and slept through the night instead of running away. Due to my exhaustion, the sleep was quick and without a dream. When I opened my eyes again, it was already morning. It felt like I closed my eyes at one moment and woke up in the next. Hello there. The first thing I saw when I woke up was a vulture standing right in front of my eyes. He tilted his head down so that his eyes were just in front of mine. I blinked once, and then twice. "Good morning, Your Majesty." I finally moved with a yawn. The vulture quickly hopped away from me but continued staying close. "Good morning, Grim," I said. "I heard about what happened last night from the other birds. Are you okay?" he asked, even though there was no real concern on his face. I thought it was nice of him to ask. "I'm fine, I didn't suffer any serious injuries. Scat-chs at most," I said. "The reason I stopped the fight was because of a bad stomach, not anything else. Do tell me if you feel something's wrong or are about to die. I call dips on your eyes and tongue," he said with a soft flap of his wings. I paused and then sighed, "That's nice to hear. I'll be sure to inform you if I am going to die." He nodded with a smile after that. He seemed almost proud of himself and kind of exuberant. Some animals had no filter at all. "And you heard it from other birds?" I asked. "Oh yes, nothing gets past our eyes. And there is a lot of gossip in the air, so if one bird saw it, everyone knows about it," he answered with a nod. "Did they say I win?" "They say you fought off one of the kings, he said. I feel like I kinda did more than that, I said and stretched in place. That made me realize I was sore in many places from last night. I did not want to get up just yet. Grim, please go out and see what the three kings are up to. If they are coming towards me, then you should inform me. I will be sleeping in today, I said, and without protesting, the vulture took to the sky. It was always so convenient to have a bird working for you. They were many times more useful than hyenas could ever be. I moved to another place that offers better shade than the cave and slept through the morning. I only woke up again in the afternoon. I was way more relaxed than the first time I woke up, so I decided to head to the watering hole. But while I was on my way there, I noticed something following me. Or should I say someone? The humans were following me. They thought they were slick by staying extremely far away from me, but I saw them. It was not hard to notice a big-ass vehicle that wouldn't disappear in the horizon. When I reached the watering hole, which was a dried-up river, I saw a few animals around. I considered hunting one of them when I saw a herd of zebras near the shore. I vomited a lot last night, so I wanted to eat more to refill my belly. I was not hungry, of course, but I didn't grow this big when I ate only when I was hungry. Sometimes you had to force down the protein. The only thing that stopped me was the fact that I was not feeling all the way there. I suffered no wounds, but I doubt I could chase down prey at the moment. I would give myself another day before I go out to hunt again. I dipped my head near the water and had a drink. I saw a few crocodiles swimming towards me, but I did not move. I just stared at them while drinking, making sure they knew I could see them and did not run. I dared them to do something to me with my eyes and body language. The big crocodiles had a chance at making me their dinner, but they didn't even try. They gave up before doing anything and disappeared into the murky water. It just goes to show how far mentality can carry an animal. It's why some animals develop bluffing as a defense mechanism. When an animal looked like it could beat you and was prepared to fight you rather than run, most of the time, the enemy wouldn't try something. Surviving in the wild was hard. Injuries, even though not fatal, could lead to death. For example, 2 leopards fought and one of them won, but at the cost of an injury on the leg. The winner could not hunt because of this injury, so he died of hunger. So, although an injury was not fatal, it could still cause death. Therefore, animals, especially predators who had to hunt their food, would not risk it if the prey fought back, even if they knew they could eventually take them down. This caused them to be somewhat of a coward if it didn't come down to a life-or-death situation. You would often see tigers fleeing from a smaller bear that was willing to fight, or a leopard giving up when a deer turned and fought back. If the fight did happen and both sustained injury, one could not hunt and would starve, while the other could recover while eating grass or fruits that did not need hunting. It was simply way more risk for the predator. This was where lions were different. A male lion had a pride and females to hunt for him, even if he was injured. This gave them the privilege of having an ego and the freedom to fight whenever there was an opportunity. Lions could be reckless without much consequence, and bravery was closely related to recklessness. That's how we evolved. At this point, all male lions had an ego of their own that increased with age and experience. Even was not spared, I would have moved my home otherwise. What would that make me? An aware idiot or true lion? I said to myself and stood up. It was rather inefficient to drink water with the tongue, so it takes a lot of time. I looked around and observed my surroundings. My nose took in the scents of different animals while my ears listened for anything new. When I found nothing of interest, my focus locked on the human vehicle far away on the horizon. It was barely in my field of vision, they were creating a massive distance between us, but I still saw them. I narrowed my eyes and saw that they were pointing a camera at me. I guess I have officially stolen their interest after what happened last night, and they wanted to film me now. I saw no harm in that as long as they didn't interfere with my life. But if they were going to do so, I wanted to check on them once more. So without wasting time, I head towards them. Chapter 45, Second Interaction. Third POV. Oh shit, he is coming towards us, isn't he? Malakatayemi, the driver of the vehicle who was forced on this operation even though he had trauma from his first time meeting Leo, asked from his seat. Maybe he's just coming towards our direction and not for us. Kyle Ramirez, the cameraman, voiced out with a hopeful tone. He was still a young man of 20 years old, the youngest among the crew. He just had a meal yesterday, and he fought with a lion last night. I don't think he will have any interest in attacking us. Dr. Tonson said while watching Leo approach with his small binoculars. The two men gulped, trying to find comfort in the expert's words. But it was hard to put your life on logical reasons when dealing with an animal. What if they got attacked anyway, just because? You never knew with Mother Nature. Look at the way he is walking, the deliberateness of his steps. Hannah Park said. She was the only person who did not show a hint of fear at Leo's approach. Instead, she almost seemed happy that she got to have a closer look at Leo. He is beautiful, she said. Oh God, Ramirez sighed. Not this shit again, Malik groaned. The four of them, Malik, Ramirez, Hannah and Dr. Tonson, were the people in the vehicle and also the four people leading the research on Leo. What? Hannah was puzzled by the reaction. Please tell your boyfriend not to eat us when he comes. Malik said while trying to resist the urge to turn on the vehicle and drive away. He was not this afraid when he encountered other lions, but since the start, Leo had always unnerved him more than any other animal had in his life. It wasn't the size, the claws or the teeth that terrified him. It was the eyes and the way Leo looked at him. It makes me feel like a bitch since you rejected me. Are you into that kind of thing, Hannah? Ramirez asked, one eye on the camera and the other giving her a side eye. Into what? Beauty and the Beast. He replied. No, absolutely not. My fascination with him stems purely from a researcher's perspective. There is nothing *soul like that. Ew, why do you even suggest that? She asked back. Chill, I was just kidding. Well, maybe a little bit, she added just to mess with them back. It worked as the two men groaned in chorus. Their little banter was just a way to cope with the current situation and to get their mind off the approaching beast. But they could only ignore the cat-shaped killing machine for so long. It soon became clear that Leo was not simply going in their direction, but he was coming for them. Don't make any sudden movements, and just try to stay calm. They can smell fear, Dr. Tonson said with all the seriousness in the world. They all watched in silent fascination when Leo finally reached them. And just like they thought, he did not simply pass them but lingered right beside them. The vehicle they were on was a jeep with no roof, so they had minimal protection if Leo wanted to jump up and attack them. But that also gave them a clear view of Leo, and they could feel his raw presence. Leo carefully observed them with curious eyes. He slowly circled around the vehicle while taking in the scent that came from them. Oh, look at you. There are so many scratch marks on your body, I guess no one comes out unharmed in a fight like that, Dr. Tonson said in a voice of wonder. Indeed, but his wounds are shallow. We thought the injuries would be more severe considering the condition of Roku that the other team reported, Hannah mentioned. I guess we know who really won the fight, Ramirez commented with a shaky breath. The lion released a long and deep growl as if understanding their words. And then they all flinched while some screamed when their vehicles moved because Leo was putting his front paws on the side. The metal groaned beneath Leo's weight. For one horrifying moment, it felt like the entire jeep would flip. He was standing on his hind legs while putting half his weight on the vehicle. That caused the jeep to tilt on one side and they tried to regain their balance. Leo's body was around 6 feet long, so when he was upright like that, he was able to reach their level. Dr. Tonson, who was in a standing position, froze when Leo reached his chest. A large animal at a distance or in pictures could never compare to one up close. It was not just the size but also the mass. It felt like you could feel the weight of the beast before you, so much bigger than you. It was a humbling experience for the humans who thought themselves gods among other creatures of the planet. They felt so vulnerable, they were at the complete mercy of another beast, and that was a new experience for them. Leo's simple breath was loud like steam coming from an engine. He took a curious sniff at the doctor. Said doctor came out from his frozen state when he saw that Leo meant no harm. Hey there, Mr. Lion, Dr. Tonson said and began speaking to Leo despite all his nervousness. Eventually, he couldn't help but put out his hand. Leo looked at the hand but did nothing to it, only giving it a curious glance. The doctor took that as a good sign, so he slowly touched the beast with his hand. He did not touch Leo on the head, he would rather avoid anything close to the mouth at the moment. He touched Leo on the shoulder, slightly rubbing it but careful not to touch the wounds. Wow, holy crap! The dignified doctor could not help but curse when he felt Leo. The first thing he noticed was the hard muscles beneath the loose hide. It was unexpected. One could see Leo was more muscular than other lions, but because of the loose skin and fur, it was impossible to know just how much. But upon touching him, it became clear that Leo was built like steel. You could feel the difference between him and the other lions. It was almost stupid to compare them. We really need to have in-depth scans of his body. He is incredible, he muttered. Leo thought that the introduction was enough and removed himself from the doctor. He circled the vehicle once more and came up on the opposite side. This time he was towering over Hannah. The girl was sitting in the back seat, so when Leo came up, he easily towered over her. She was beneath him, her hair gently brushing against his dark, growing mane. Time seemed to freeze for the girl and she held her breath. When the shock passed and she breathed again, she took in his presence along within. The smell of dried blood and testosterone hit her nose. Leo was not as musky compared to other lions. His mane almost felt soft on her skin. This was mostly because Leo took care of himself better than other lions. Taking a bath daily by swimming in the watering hole was common, especially when he was in the Pride Lands. After a few long seconds passed, she gathered up enough courage to reach out for him. She put out her hand and touched his body. Her hand felt the top of his front limb. Her palm pressed against his muscular shoulder, which was flexed at the moment. They felt like an iron yarn with iron threads for muscle fibers. She was more eager to examine him than the doctor was. Leo took in her scent and then turned his attention to Ramirez and Malik. The cameraman was standing and busy with his camera. "Hello, big guy." "Say hi to the camera," Ramirez said, fear evident in his voice, but he tried to be brave. It was likely because he was a young man trying to act brave in front of his crush, Hannah. Leo took in his scent and memorized his face as well. That short moment of observation made Ramirez calmer before. He realized that they were dealing with an intelligent animal and not just a savage. "Man, why are you so friend-shaped if you could kill me with one swing?" he asked with chuckles. Leo, understanding the comment, gave a grin. But it looked intimidating for Ramirez, so his calm nearly faltered again. He turned his attention to the black man next. Malik Adeyemi was curled up in his driver's seat and unlike everyone else, he was still terrified. His expression seemed to amuse Leo as he moved closer to him. "Oh hell nah," Malik cried out. His voice, which was captured on video, would later go on to become a meme audio in the future. Leo scoffed and laughed before he finally turned his focus back on Hannah. She was tracing the lines on his body, which was slightly red from the dried blood. She was daring enough to move his mane and search for other injuries on him. She did not find any serious wounds, but she found other things. "Scars?" she muttered and looked up at him with questioning eyes. "Why do you have so many scars?" It was not visible with the fur, but when you moved that and took a close look, you would find endless scars on Leo's body. The claw of the leopard he fought in his youth, at that time, he was completely bathed in his own blood. That should hint at how many scars his body had after he healed. Then there was his fight with the hyenas not long after, when Scar took over the Pride. Then there were other scars he got while growing up. The time when he was bitten by a crocodile in the watering hole, and other times when he fought baboons, etc. And recently, there was his fierce battle with Scar and 100 hyenas. The scars told all the stories of these battles, and they painted a new picture for them about Leo. It was not surprising that Leo survived a fight with a dominant male. He had survived worse odds all his life. A survivor. A beast forged from the fires of hardships. That was Leo. "What happened to you?" Hannah asked with all the curiosity in the world. She wanted to find out everything about Leo so badly. Their first reaction upon seeing him live so naturally, even though he had a short tail, was to think that he was born with it. It would explain his natural adaptation and how fitting it looked with the rest of his body. But when they take a closer look at his body, the scars tell a different story. Leo was not born tailless. It was taken from him, likely in a battle or violence in his youth. That was a giant discovery and opened up so many other questions. Leo looked at her for a while as if he could understand her words. He did not speak, but his eyes told things. Dr. Tonson came to see the scars as well. He fixed his glasses and looked at the scars which Hannah was revealing. Her hand brushed aside the fur, and as she continued, there were scars in every inch of his body. "My God," the doctor remarked. "It's like he grew up in a torture house. To survive and thrive till now after all those injuries, he has to be one lucky lion." "Or a fighter," Hannah said. The doctor nodded. Most of the scars look like a cut from claws. Perhaps his pride was taken over by a new male and the new king tried to kill him multiple times during his youth. Or perhaps it could be from other cubs. It's possible they discriminate against him because of his lack of tail. "That rough," Ramirez commented while focusing the camera on the scars as well. imagine the trauma dumping he could do if he could speak. That caused everyone to laugh or chuckle, including Leo. The tension had mostly disappeared by now. Leo finally deemed it was enough interaction, so he moved away and lifted his weight off the car. And before anyone could say anything, he left as suddenly as he came. The crew watched him leave and head back to the watering hole. What just happened was an experience that would stick with them their whole lives. Chapter 46, Resolve. First POV. The humans were surprisingly chill. The short interaction that I had with them was enough to tell that they meant no harm at all. I realized that they were those kinds of people obsessed with nature and love wildlife as much as they love themselves, like Steve Irwin. Of course, they could not compare to the legend himself, no one could, but they were giving me the same vibes. I learned that they were full of personality, even from the short interaction. There was the woman, Hannah, as they called her, who was a little obsessed with me. The Mexican boy Ramirez was the cameraman, the African guy was called Macaulay or something. And they referred to the old guy as a doctor. I could still catch their conversation after I walked away, so that's how I got their names. I allowed the researchers to fade into the background as they wished and went on with my day. I head back to the watering hole and take a place under the shade of a tree nearby. My eyes carefully observed the animals around the watering hole. I watched them come and go as they drank the water. My eyes scanned over every animal that passed by, looking for the opportunity for possible prey. It was the main reason why I came here in the first place. If I wanted water, I could just drink from the small pool back in my place. It was the opportunity to study the animals that I was seeking. Meanwhile, I stretched my body under the shade. Big muscles were cool and all, but if they hindered my flexibility, they would do more harm than good. For this reason, I always did a lot of stretching to keep my muscles loose. Although I prioritize size and power, I never forgot the fact that I was not a bear but a cat. Even if I gained mass, it should not come at the cost of my natural agility and flexibility. The afternoon rolled around quickly as I spent my time under the tree. When the sun was heading down towards the horizon, Grim flew down and landed beside me in a flutter of wings and gravity. "The other Lion Kings are on the move," he said and eyed me carefully for my reaction. I did not show any surprise. It's about time for their usual patrol, so it's not out of place for them to start moving. Grim shook his head. "They are not patrolling, they are heading straight towards your home." My ears perked up, and I turned fully towards him. "How many?" "2 of them. The one you fought last night, Roku, is not with them and is staying with the Pride. He can barely move, he spent the whole day moaning in pain from the wounds. The most he did was mount a female in the morning," he said. "Roku came out of the fight even worse than me." I did not voice out my pain, but I was sore all over my body. Each movement took effort, which was why I did not even bother hunting prey. Now imagine him. Coupled with the injuries, it was logical to assume Roku would be out of the equation for a while. I hoped for a week or 2. "Tell me more about these other 2 kings," I asked Grim. "They are known as the Mbalai brothers, said to be the sons of the legendary King Mbalai in the Masai Mara region, which is beyond the Serengeti. The brotherhood consists of 3, you already met Roku, who is said to be the smartest among them. The other 2 brothers are even fiercer than Roku himself," Grim said. Of course, he introduced himself as Roku the Thinker. Usually, the smart characters are usually not the strongest ones. Macaulay is one of them. He is the most aggressive among the 3 and has also seen the most battles. You could tell him apart from his numerous scars and jagged dark mane. Then there is Baraka, who is quite honestly more gentle compared to his other 2 brothers. He is also unlike other lions because he has white fur instead of the usual yellow fur," he said. "How big are they?" I asked the most important question. "Both are bigger than you," he replied without skipping a beat. "Facts do not hesitate." Well, that was not good. I was the size of an average male lion, which meant the 2 brothers were bigger and stronger than average. Macaulay will be much bigger than you but not overwhelming. Baraka on the other hand is a different beast. He is almost twice the size of his brothers. His sheer size and powers earned the respect of his brothers, even though he is quite gentle in nature and rarely fought, Grim said. I sucked in a breath while digesting the information. Okay, let's analyze this. The average full-grown male lion is around 190 to 200 kilograms, which is my current size. Roku was slightly smaller than me, but that was by a negligible margin, so we would be roughly the same size. Macaulay was said to be a bit bigger but not overwhelming, so I could expect him to weigh around 230 to 240 kilograms. This was already a noticeable size difference, but it was not too much. I could probably still match him in sheer power because, unlike normal lions, I trained so I had muscles and power where it mattered. It was not just about how big you are, but where you are big. Two people can have the same weight but a great difference in power. Power is also about build, and I was certain I would not lose to any other lion in that regard. I forged my body with deliberate intention and built myself for power. So even if we were not equal in power, I would be strong enough to match him and fight him on even ground. But the main problem came from this Baraka. A white lion was it? I remember watching videos about white lions in my past life, most of them were always bigger than normal. Almost twice the size of his brothers seemed like an exaggeration, but it was also possible. I think the largest living lion ever recorded was nearly 400 kilograms. But that should be in captivity, right? I didn't remember. I would speculate Baraka to be around 280 kilograms, if not a bit more or less. I did not believe he would surpass 300 kilograms. Perhaps he was long and wide, so he looked bigger than he actually was. But 280 kilograms was already insane. That's in the size range of a grizzly bear. Holy shit! How long would it take me to be that size? I would like to believe I could eventually reach such a size, but only after I was fully grown or close to fully grown. Are you certain of your information? I asked Grim, to which he replied. Why would I lie to you? I gritted my teeth and looked towards the sky. I would have to trust him on this because I sure as hell was not taking a peek to confirm any time soon. If I got close enough to see them, it meant I was in range for an attack. They would also be aware of my presence through smell way before I could see them. Right on cue, I heard roars echoing in the distance. Two distinct roars to be exact. Roar. 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 A lion could tell much from the roar of the other. I always knew they were big, powerful, and in their prime, but I seemed to have underestimated them still. I did not roar back but released a growl that shook the ground. I got up from the shade and walked away. I was walking towards the opposite direction from my home. Where are you going? Grim asked from behind me. Away from them, I said. If they really come to my home, I want them to think that I left. I will return at night when they are done with their patrol. So you are running? Grim asked while hopping awkwardly to my side. He eyed me curiously, hoping for a reaction to his remark, but I gave nothing. I'm waiting for my time to come, I said and forced a smile to cheer myself up. I am not the main character favored by fate. Ever since I was born, the odds had been stacking against me and only got worse as I age. Who would have guessed that the first pride encountered would be led by 3 kings? All of whom were powerful individuals in their own right. But you would never hear me whine or cry over it. Instead, I was glad and happy that such odds were against me. The only thing I was sure of was victory in the end, so all these hurdles only worked to make me stronger and better. More. Give me more, I said in an almost chanting manner, give me more challenges to overcome, more struggles to walk through. Throw me more threats. Make me stronger. Because you know what? God didn't send a crown when he wanted to make David the king. He sent Goliath. Chapter 47, What is Pride to a Lion? First POV. I was avoiding them Bailey brothers. It was the smartest thing I could do with how things stand at the moment. I could defeat Roku, I could probably fight Makalai, but I was not too sure about Baraka. From the description of his size, I would likely lose against him, but Grim also said that he was gentle in nature and rarely fought. So I might be able to stand a chance by exploiting his lack of experience. But be that as it may, it was absolutely irrelevant how I would fare against each one of them. If a battle broke out, it was not going to be a fair fight of 1 vs 1. It would be 3 vs 1, and I had no hope in that situation. When the sun fully settled beyond the horizon and stars decorated the sky, I made my return to my copy. When I reached home, it was no longer an early night. The savannah was asleep, and the only sound was the sound of insects like crickets croaking in the distance. I was about to climb up my hill, but then I stopped at the base. My eyes narrowed and my nose twitched before I turned towards the trees on the hill. I moved away from my usual entrance to the hill and climbed up from elsewhere. I walked up to one of the trees, and before I even reached it, my nose caught an unpleasant smell. I did not even bother taking another sniff and quickly moved away. I climbed up the hill and went elsewhere. I let my nose guide me through rocks, boulders, and through the sparse vegetation. The familiar stench was everywhere I went. It was not just one but two distinct scents, so they were able to mark my home in different places. In the end, I came up to the place where I usually sleep. The small cave provides shade in the daylight and shelter from rain at night. It was the perfect cozy spot that also provided a great view. And on that exact spot was huge piles of shit. I paused for a long time, staring at the shit with eyes that lose color ever passing second. It did not take a genius to figure out what happened. The Bailai brothers came to my home, and after they didn't find me, they thought that I had left the place and fled elsewhere. So they did the next best thing they could do, which was to erase my scent from the hill and replace it with theirs. They marked my home with their scent and claimed the place as theirs. Although it never crossed my mind for some reason, what happened was to be expected. It was a lion's behavior to mark their territory after all, and this copy, no matter if I called it my home, belonged to them completely by right of conquest. But still, knowing all that, I still could not stop the anger that came from the deepest part of my being. I tried to reason with my emotions, and that did not work well. At first, I thought it was a situation similar to shouting at someone to punch you and then them actually doing it. You were shocked that they were daring to punch you, and you became enraged. But it was not that simple. Even the emotions I was experiencing at that moment was not that simple. It was weird. I thought I knew anger, I thought I knew rage. After all, a lot of things have happened to me in the short 2 to 3 years that I've been alive. Only a month ago, I saw Scar trying to mate with a female I considered mine. Rage had different tastes, anger had different flavors. The emotion of red that boiled from the depths of my soul was not so shallow. It was old and ancient. It was like anger that had been passed down from generation to generation from the first Lion King. The anger at seeing someone disrespect your home, your kingdom, and marking what you consider yours with their disgusting scent. The rage was inherited. There were no words to describe the feeling. No human mind would understand it. It was imbued in me as much as my instincts were. Ha 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 ha, I laughed. It was not funny at all. It was so not funny, but a laugh seemed to be the most fitting reaction. I guess laughing was not just an expression of joy and humor. Interesting, I said to myself while trying to restrain my own body. My blood was boiling in my veins, my muscles literally started getting a pump even through inaction. My body was begging for a fight, revenge. How fucking dare they? And also, it was asking for redemption. I was the one who walked the other way after all. So I felt that I lost a part of my dignity. My body wanted to reclaim that dignity as soon as possible. The human's logical mind and the lion's body clashed. It was a new experience that reminded me I have much to learn. I was already the size of a fully grown lion, but I was not fully grown. In fact, I was not even halfway there. And growing up for a lion was not just about physical, but also spiritual. What does it mean to be a lion? And why was a lion always associated with pride? Was pride a part of being a lion? Well, this experience hinted at the answer. Pride was an identity for a lion. It's what gave him the crown of the king of the jungle even though he was not the biggest, fastest, or strongest. Without pride, a lion was just like any other animal. It was just a big cat. I never knew that before. It's why the thought never even crossed my mind. I had assumed that I would be okay with doing things like this. What's the big deal even if they mark my home with their scent? The rain would wash them away before I even knew it. It was a big deal. Maybe not to a human but for a lion, that shit was personal. It was personal on the DNA level. Gee, it's like I am just now discovering my standards, or s*quality, I said, trying to distract myself from my own rage. I guess I found where my pride draws the line, I said. I walked down from the hill, having learned something new and discovered my pride. It definitely gave me a new perspective on things. When I came back down from the hill, the anger in me was no longer felt. It was because it had planted itself into my heart as a grudge. The development made a drastic change in the future that I had envisioned. Because the conflict between me and the Bailai brothers was no longer just about tradition or me needing an army. Roku, Makalai, and Baraka. They now shared a list with a lion called Scar. Motherfuckers. Next time it's on site. Chapter 48, Timeskip, 2. First POV. 6 months later. 2 years 8 months old. For the first time in my life, time did not blur. I was never comfortable enough not to notice the passage of time. Each day was followed by new challenges in the Serengeti. Not only that, every waking hour was spent with a purpose in mind. I was back to building myself again. There was nothing else in my mind except growing stronger, bigger, and faster. The roars of the Mbalai brothers that echoed routinely in the afternoon were a great motivator. Their daily patrol reminded me daily what my goal was and what I was trying to achieve. For 6 months, that is half a year, I spent my time like so. I hunted more frequently than ever before as I made it a goal to get fresh meat every 3 days. My teamwork with Grim had also gotten better than before. Due to his help, I was able to catch prey whenever I wanted to. I did not waste time tracking them and could instead spend my effort solely to kill them. But even then, hunting did not always guarantee success. In such cases, I would simply move to another herd of prey with Grim guiding me and try again on the same day. Therefore on the days that I would set out to hunt I almost always came home with a full belly. It was not just through hunting that I got my food either. Grim was my eyes in the sky. He reported injured animals that would die soon and old animals that were on the brink of death. And my favorite, he would report to me when he found other predators making a successful hunt. Most of the time it was hyenas and wild dogs, so I could stroll up to these predators and steal their food whenever I wanted to. Lucky for them I was not really into the habit of stealing as I wanted the experience of hunting prey myself. It was a good workout and training for the body. Except when it was the hyenas, of course. I always made sure to steal their food if they were nearby. It was nothing personal really, they were one of the biggest predators in the region and they actually put up fights to defend their food. This gave me a chance to train my fighting skills and keep my instincts sharp. Who am I kidding? The main reason was because I did not like them. Plain and simple. Anyways, due to all these stacking reasons I never lacked food. Instead, it was the opposite. I had more food and prey than I could consume. This was where Grim came in once more. After a few weeks of living life in abundance and waste, Grim started bringing his friends to feed as well. It started off small. Grim told me that his friends would also like to come under me to have permission to feed on my abundant kills, and finding no reason to reject I accepted them. That began to snowball rather quickly, and now you would often see a horde of vultures flying overhead whenever I went out to hunt. They would litter the surroundings, waiting for me to finish eating my fill so that they could feast on all the remains. I voiced my concern, but Grim assured me that he had everything under control. Once, I told them not to feast on the remains and all of them followed my order. That proved they were truly under my control, so I let Grim do whatever he wanted from then on. So yeah, now I had an army of vultures under me, I guess. However, I kept in mind that most of them were not loyal and were only with me for the benefit. For example, I could not just tell them to attack the Mbalai lions. They obeyed my orders, but they wouldn't die for me as I was not vital to their survival. I was only making their life easier, and that was not worth dying for. Speaking of the Mbalai brothers, I never encountered them again after what happened last time. The Serengeti Pride had a specific region where they hunted and stayed, so they did not move elsewhere most of the time. The Three Kings still patrolled daily but followed a pattern, so it was hard to meet them unless you were looking for them. Also, I think Grim naturally guided me towards prey far away from the Serengeti Pride, so I never had issue with them through the passing months. And on their side of the story, they probably thought I was dead. Ruka was gravely injured during the fight, and since it was a draw they assumed I would not have fared better. I did not have a pride to hunt or care for me while I was injured, so it was natural to believe me to be dead. If they had returned to my home and on my side of the region I would have fought them, but since they didn't return I was not going out to seek a fight either. The area that the Pride ruled was wide, more than enough for one more lion to live unnoticed. I was simply growing in their silence and ignorance. It would be correct to say they were growing their own downfall in their backyard. First POV. How much longer? I asked towards the vultures flying in the sky. There were 3 of them in the sky. The other 2 fly a little higher while Grim flew right above me. Just a few more distance, Grim answered and continued leading me to a herd. I was walking at a fast pace behind them, jogging would be the correct term. It was the dry season, so prey was starting to get scarce. I had been jogging after them for almost 3 hours now, and no other animals were in sight. The changing seasons in the Serengeti were weird. There was no monsoon, autumn, winter, summer, etc. The seasons were just dry season, wet season, long dry season and long wet season / And currently, it was the long dry season. I've come to learn that the long dry season came with some complications. Like the land was dry during this time, as the name suggests. There was golden grass where there once was green. Many watering holes have dried up and the remaining ones have shrunk dramatically in size. Even the small stream of pool back in my home was no more. Every resource was scarce. This meant that the land was no longer suitable for most of the animals living here. Many herd animals like wildebeest, zebras, antelopes, etc. have all migrated northwards. They were following the Mara rivers in search of greener areas to feed. These herds were in thousands upon thousands. The region where we live, which was once abundant with prey, was slowly turning into a lifeless desert. Prey were disappearing at a visible rate. This was the first time I experienced such things. The Pride Lands had no dry season, it was green full year round and prey was always available. But not in the Serengeti. At this rate, I will not be able to keep up with my diet, I said to myself thoughtfully. My current diet of a big meal every 3 days was not going to be possible anymore if I did not find a solution to this. I was at a point in my life where I was growing very rapidly. I could not stunt my growth with a lack of food. I wouldn't allow it. I had to find a way, and I had to find it fast. Up ahead, Grim said, and his wings flapped loudly before propelling himself higher in the sky. I stared forward and I saw a small herd of antelopes at the end of my vision. The animals were disappearing quickly and these herds also seemed to be on their way to migrating. But they were late than most. It was the perfect opportunity. Who knows, it might be my last opportunity to have a full meal for a while with the way things are going. I slowed down my pace and crouched low among the grass. My form completely disappeared as if swallowed by the land and I started stalking my prey. The sky was starting to be filled with vultures. There were around 10 of them and they flew high enough in the sky to not bother the prey. But they were circling the herd of antelopes like they were telling an omen. The heat of the sun seemed to make the air vibrate with its heat. The antelopes were occupied among themselves, searching for any form of green on the yellow sand of the dry lands. I stalked like nature's perfect design. After 6 months of hunting, I was a master of my craft. I glide along with the breeze, the golden grass works better than ever to camouflage my body. As I was closing in, my scent got carried by the wind to the antelopes. They immediately perked their heads up and stared towards me. I quickened my pace, and my limbs worked magic to move me forward smoothly with basically no bobbing in my action. I stepped on dried twigs and grass, and their ears faced me immediately. They heard it. Their eyes finally locked on mine and then they ran. They flinched back in panic and moved away like driven by lightning. But by the time they saw me, it was already too late. I explode forward. My paw slapped up a cloud of dust upon movement. I was able to reach my full speed faster than any of the antelope. After half a year, the things that made me special had gotten even more pronounced. My shoulders rolled, my hind legs exploded and my front limbs pulled me forward. Not like a lion, not like a tiger. My actions were a bit more ancient than that. I was the perfect ambush predator. The antelopes fled and my eyes decided on a target fast. I ignored the smaller ones that I reached first and rocketed towards the biggest one among them. He was trying to zigzag away from me, but at this point, I was already way too familiar with the running pattern of antelopes. The fact that they move in herds was also a giveaway to the real direction he was trying to go. A herd animal would run along the herd instead of running to an isolated open space. It was instinct to stick with the group. I knew this, and so I used this. I caught up to the antelope from the side, having perfectly predicted where he would go. I did not swipe my claws at him nor did I try to bite his neck, I simply crashed against him. The force knocked him off his feet and sent him tumbling away. I chose the biggest among them, but he would have weighed 90 kilograms at most. His small frame was nothing against mine, with a weight that had easily surpassed 200 kilograms. It was a tiny prey against a giant predator. The antelope struggled in vain. He had hooves for feet which did not really go along with balance or catching himself from falling. I ran up to him and before he had time to get back up, I took his life with a bite through his neck. The death was suffocating. I trapped him under my front legs and bit down at his neck. The last struggle of life was always the most intense, but it was nothing to me. I suppressed him like a father suppressing a baby's tantrum. Instead, I used that time to breathe heavily and cool down my body under the intense heat of the savannah. A great hunt like always, my lord. Grim was the first to fly down beside me. Tell the others to continue following the herd. If prey are going to be this scarce from now on, I might as well hunt them tomorrow before they move to a new land, I said. Of course, he replied swiftly. And so, I prepared myself to face another challenge in front of me once more. This one was a bit odd from my other challenges but would still prove a worthy foe. The dry season was here. Chapter 49, Path to Power. First POV. Like always, I started with the organs. They were the most nourishing part of the meat, and I wasn't going to let my limited appetite be wasted on things like dry muscle, fats, or skin. My jaw split open the stomach and chest with one violent tug, and I immediately dove in. The liver came first. It was rich, dark, and heavy with nutrients. It was almost bitter in taste, the aroma alone was intense and would stick to your throat for a day or two. The heart was next. It was dense and powerful, still faintly warm and twitching when I tried to chew on it. After that came the rest of the organs, like the kidneys, the spleen, the lungs, and then the pancreas. I avoided the stomach and intestines altogether as they didn't provide the same value. After that, I lapped up the blood that pooled in the cavity of the chest. The blood was so red that it looked black to the eye. It was nutritious, I could tell. I did not need to be a doctor or a dietitian to know which part of the meat was the best part for me. I knew it on instinct. All predators knew which part of the meat was the best. Even when I was feeding, I was eating with purpose. There was no point in time when I chose taste over function. Growth came from what I fed on, and right now, growth is the only thing on my mind. I could eat the meat that tasted good after I was done growing. Until then, I eat as much as I can, and I make sure to eat the best quality of meat. Almost like a bodybuilder who focuses not just on training but on diet as well. After I was done with the organs, I moved down to the lower parts of the prey and ate the testicles. I did not like eating this particular part of the meat, but I had to because, believe it or not, they contain testosterone and could also increase my production of testosterone. Funny, you gotta eat dick to be dominant. I moved back to the top and then cracked open the skull with my teeth. The brain of the antelope was small, so I quickly slurped that up and then finally, I started eating the protein-rich muscle meat. The muscles taste the best, so this time I took my time eating instead of just devouring them for the benefit. But before I could even truly enjoy my food, other predators began creeping up on me. They were cautious but driven by hunger, they approached me. I tore away the skin of the antelope to feast on the red muscles. All the while, I kept my eyes on the small wild dogs that walked towards me in numbers. African wild dogs, arguably the most successful hunters in the world. The success hunting rate of other predators like lions, leopards, and hyenas pale in comparison. They are small dogs that hunt in packs. Their intelligence and teamwork were responsible for their success. But even they were victims of the dry season. It didn't matter how much of a successful hunter you were when there was nothing to hunt. I've experienced this before, but predators trying to steal each other's food were becoming more and more common as the dry season reached its height. It seemed they had been in the area for quite some time, trying to circle the herd of antelopes and kill one, but I began my hunt before them. While they were studying their prey and strategizing, I had just powered through and caught an antelope before them. Now the herd had run away, so their only option was to try to get some scraps from me. I was a single lion feasting on a full-grown antelope, surely I would leave scraps, right? Sadly, the remains of my meal were already booked. The dogs continued coming at me. They were walking very slowly and did not even look at me, as if to try and fool me that they did not have eyes on my food. They thought they could use their numbers and smarts to steal my food. I tried to count them, but their small size and similar patterns made it hard to be exact. But I suppose they were around 30 or 40, as is the size of a pack in the Serengeti from previous observations. One of them tried to come close to me by walking a path diagonally. Of course, they dared not make their intent too obvious by approaching me in a straight line. But I was not easily fooled. I stopped eating my food and adjusted my posture. That was enough to chase away some of the dogs while the brave ones froze in their spot. I looked down at them one by one, telling them through body language that I knew exactly what they were trying to do. Then I returned to eating. The wild dogs did not leave. Instead, they create a distance where they feel safe and observe me from there. I continued eating. I let them feel safe. But secretly, I was adjusting my posture. My muscles tensed up when my forepaws planted on the ground, and before anything in the world could prepare, I exploded out. The wild dogs jumped in their place. They immediately tucked their tails between their legs and got ready to run. They wanted to make sure I was chasing them before running away. But by the time they realized the truth, it was too late. I covered the distance between us faster than you would believe. Even a cheetah would have to give me respect for my sheer explosive speed in short distances. Even before they could run, I already sunk my teeth on one of them. It was one particularly big dog that had felt so safe in the distance that it lay on the ground. He did not react as fast as the others who were standing on guard, so I caught him. A cloud of dust, the shrilling scream of a dog in pain. And then a lion's violent growl silences everything else. When the dust settled, I was standing there with my teeth sinking through his skull. I slowly made my way back to my meal with the small dog hanging limply on my jaw. I put the corpse beside my meal and sat down to continue eating. The corpse of their kin worked as a warning to the dogs. They would never succeed in stealing my food, but I did not even want them to try. It was incredible how ruthless I was, but it came naturally. Every predator would take the chance to kill each other in the name of lowering competition. It was in our blood to hate each other. Even if animals here were intelligent and could talk, instincts were instincts. It was why I never even tried to talk to them, much less try to pull them under me. The only reason Scar could convince the hyenas was because of the sheer abundance in the Pride Lands and because of their common hated enemy, Mufasa. The dogs continued staring towards me, but this time not at my prey but at their dead comrade. Their ears were all down and they seemed to mourn for the loss. Some of them howled in agony and grief. But eventually, they left before another one joined the dead. After they left, some hyenas tried to come and observe me as well, but upon seeing the corpse of the wild dog and my death stare, they left quickly. At this point, most of the hyenas were aware of me and my hatred towards them. Rarely would they even show their face to me. I ate to the limit of my stomach and then let the vultures feed on the remains. I waited for them to finish the food, and in the meantime, I allowed my body to work on digestion. I could not just leave my remains as other predators like foxes wanted them as well. They would have just fought off the vultures to eat their share, so I guarded the birds as they ate. After all of that was done, I headed back to my home. It was going to be around a 4-hour walk, and it would be much easier to sleep somewhere else, but I still went home. I took the walk as a nice cardio after eating. I need to burn as many calories as I was eating in the end. I only shot a glance towards the vehicle in the distance. The humans were a constant presence during the passing months, but at this point, I barely noticed them. They were a part of the background at this point. They did not interfere. The most they did was steal my shit and fallen furs back in my cave. By the time I was home, it was already dark, and I slept immediately. Eat. Sleep. Train. Repeat. The path of power for a lion was not as awesome as those in fantasy stories, but I didn't complain. I was really good at it so far. Chapter 50, Are You Approaching Me? First POV. 3 days later. The herd of antelope that I told Grim to keep an eye on did not waste their time and moved on with their migration. They followed the rare rivers and were already out of the region, so I had to give up on them. So after 3 days, I set out to hunt once more. My muscles screamed at me whenever I moved. Perhaps it was not a good idea to train so much yesterday. The training consisted of me trying to climb up the kopje with the least amount of leaps possible. I went overboard by doing it 4 times. Fortunately, after walking for a good while, the soreness faded a bit. As if my body realized I would continue moving anyway, so it stopped torturing itself to try and make me stop. The sun had not yet reached even halfway to its peak, so it was still morning. But the air already felt scorched. The breeze was dry and sharp against my nose, like breathing in powdered ash. Each step I took kicked up a faint puff of dust that clung to my paws. The once lush grasses had faded into brittle gold, swaying stiffly in the breeze like they had forgotten how to bend. There were a few trees here and there, scattered like bones. But even then, most of them were dried up and did not provide actual shade, only the illusion of it. There was also a thick silence in the air. When herds of animals migrate in thousands, most life in the Serengeti is gone. Zebras, wildebeest, antelopes etc., all the common and plentiful animals were the ones that moved too. So the land was quiet. The only animals I saw were warthogs that sprinted across the plain when they saw me, and the giraffe that watched me curiously when I passed them. God, I wish I could take down those towers of flesh already. But that was literally impossible. Maybe with huge pride behind me, I could fell one giraffe. I've seen the bigger males fight over females before. They could swing their head like wrecking balls. Their long neck gave them insane leverage, and I kid you not when I say the sound of their attacks reminds me of explosions. Not a gunshot, more like bombs exploding on impact. If you want gunshots, their hooves smashing the ground sounded like gunshots. You would never guess how powerful giraffes are until you see them firsthand. They could be put in the same category as rhinos and animals not to be fucked with, both animals being right below elephants. I turned my gaze back to the blue sky and made sure I was still following behind Grim. He was the only one guiding me this time. And so, I walked through the savannah for an hour, following behind the vulture in the sky. But after an hour had passed, Grim released a croaking scream. Vultures were one of the ugliest sounding birds in the world. The sound they made was like a person yelling, "Aak," while being strangled by the eagle Khabib. It was an uglier version of a crow's caw. But no matter how unpleasant he sounded, it worked to catch my attention immediately. I stopped in my tracks and waited as he flew higher in the sky and circled a few times. And then he flew down and landed in front of me with a cloud of dust. "Is there something wrong?" I asked. "It's a herd of impala ahead," he answered. That was unfortunate. Impalas were still one of the hardest prey to catch. But I did not see how that was a problem. And the problem is, we are not the only ones hunting them. I do not know why they came all this way, but the Syringid pride is here, Grim answered me with a hard nod. I sucked in a deep breath, and my mind immediately worked to assess the situation. Grim said he did not know why, but the reason why they came all the way over here was obvious. Prey was scarce for them, too. The herd of impala might as well be the last herd in the area that could be hunted. When resources were scarce, it made sense that we would meet on one of them eventually. "Are any of the kings there?" I asked, to which he shook his head. "It's only the hunting party, females. I saw 4 of them, but more are probably hiding nearby to stalk the herd," he said. "What should we do, my lord? If the females are here, I'm afraid the kings will not be far behind," he asked, but there was no real concern in his voice. Instead, I heard excitement in his tone. He was secretly eager to see how things play out. "Do you have any other herd or prey that I could hunt nearby?" I asked after thinking for a while. He shook his head once more, a hard no, "I'm afraid not." "Then it's obvious, we will hunt the herd as well," I said and continued onwards. It was not clear when I would find another herd or possible prey. I could not let my chance to feed slip by just because of other lions. I needed to grow as well. And you might think that I was afraid of the Bailey brothers and should avoid them for now, but the truth was quite the opposite. I was not reckless enough to start a fight with them and be the aggressor, but if an opportunity presents itself, I was more than willing to meet them again, face to face. The past 6 months were more than just training, eating and sleeping. There were also results and progress. Grim took off to the sky once more, and we both headed towards the herd of impala. "Would you look at that?" I said while looking towards the herd of impala in the distance. I was still far enough that I could stand and watch them without scaring them off. My eyes were not focused on the prey, instead, they were locked on the lioness that was stalking them from the sides. I could not catch a glimpse of them, but since I knew what to look for, I noticed the movement among the sea of grass. "They know what they are doing, that's for sure," I commented while I watched them stalk the herd with patience. One of them slinked along the left flank of the herd. Another one mirrored her action and stalked to the right flank of the herd. They were closing in on the herd from both sides. The scene was vividly familiar to me. I remember following the hunting party back when I was just a small cub. They would use similar tactics as the one they were using. "If those two are steering the herd, then the chasers must be," I said and turned my head to look at the back of the herd. Right there. Just like I expected, there were 2 lionesses staying low among the grass right behind the herd. Those 2 lions were the chasers, they would be the first to move and chase the herd. The 2 lionesses on either side would steer the herd towards a narrow path, which was referred to as the killing lane. The funnel tactic, or so my mother told me. My eyes wandered across the whole area and I tried to predict where they were going to lead the herd. Mostly they would chase them towards an open area with good hiding spots. If possible, a sloping terrain was preferred. After I saw what should be the killing lane, I walked around the herd and headed towards there. My prediction was proven to be true as I felt a vibration on the ground when I reached the area. I saw at once the 3 female lions that lay among the yellow grass. They also noticed my presence and were growling at me with malice in their tone. I did not approach close to them, instead, I lowered myself onto the grass as well. I was shamelessly joining them in their strategy and taking the situation to my advantage. Not long after, the chasers moved. The 2 lionesses on the back began chasing, causing the herds to start running away. When the herd was about to move in a different direction, the lioness on the left emerged from the grass. The impala released a fearful bellow and then they changed their direction. They tried to move further to the right, but another lioness popped up from the grass. The herd was left with no choice but to run forward. They came like a stampede. The herd consisted of around 40 impalas, enough to shake the ground when they ran towards you. The 3 lionesses who stayed in the killing lane burst forth after the herd moved close to us. They were the ones responsible for taking down the targeted impala. Usually, it would only be 2 or 1 lionesses who stayed in the killing lane. But since the Serengeti pride were big, they had multiple lionesses stay in the killing lane to take down more than one prey. I saw them run towards different targets respectively. On the other hand, I remained in my place. I waited for a few of the impalas to come even closer to me, and when they were in my range, I exploded out. I did not have to chase after the impala for a long distance like they did. I simply came out like a crocodile from water and collided with the impala that came straight at me. The impala was a big male, and when he saw me, he was intending to headbutt me. His head was low, antlers facing forward, and then he charged. Usually, he would charge through a lioness with ease while leaving damage. But I reacted quickly and moved to the side. I used my paw to steer him away, barely missing my body, and then we crashed and rolled on the ground. We kicked up a cloud of dust in our struggle, but when the dust settled, I was holding him by the neck and suffocating him. Catching an impala had never been easier. Among the 3 lionesses in the killing lane, one of them failed, but the other 2 had their prey by the neck. They did not have the raw power to bring them down solo, so they waited and dragged the prey down. Soon, other lionesses came and helped bring down the impala fully. But by that point, I was no longer paying attention to them. I was busy with my own prey. I began dragging the impala away from the area. My eyes searched for a good place to eat, and when I saw a big bush in the distance, I headed towards there. The bush was void of green leaves, but the complex branches provided enough shade. It took more effort to drag the kill to the shade than it did to actually kill it. But when I reached there, it was worth it. The sun was at its peak in the sky, and under the relentless heat, even a small shade went a long way to cool the body. After that, I began tearing into my food as usual. Around half an hour into eating my meal, I was disturbed by the sound of thunder in the sky. Wait, not thunder. A roar. I pulled my head out from the inside of the impala and stared towards the direction of the roar. My face and mane were covered in blood as I prepared to greet the kings of this land. It was hard to notice just how much progress I made when living alone. I needed other lions to compare to. So let's see where I stand now. They already knew where I was through my scent, so I roared back to announce my presence. A roar with only one meaning. Come. Chapter 51, Grudge Unfolds. Third POV. I don't like this. Hannah said with a shaky voice while looking at Leo carrying an impala towards the shade. What if the dominant lions come for him? She asked, her knuckles turning white around her binoculars. I wouldn't worry about that, Dr. Tonson said while adjusting his hat, because they undoubtedly, most certainly, will come for him. It's inevitable. I agree. Our lion has shown impressive intellect, but this was a dumb move on his part. He should have never come close to the other males, Ramirez commented while using his camera to record everything. The research team had parked their vehicle at a distance. They were always present and had even recorded Leo joining the Serengeti Pride hunting party to catch his own prey. But contrary to their expectation, Leo was not eating his food as fast as he could and running away. Instead, he was taking his food near a shade to enjoy it peacefully, like he usually does. I don't understand. He should know that the dominant males are close by, right? Adeyemi asked but then questioned himself, are they? He took out his walkie-talkie and contacted the other vehicle. They were the other group of researchers responsible for keeping tabs on the Serengeti Pride. Hello, is there any chance that the males are not close by? Adeyemi asked carefully on the phone. No, it's quite the opposite. They are coming towards you, the person on the other side said. How many? Adeyemi asked again, wondering if there was any chance that only 2 or 1 of the males made their way here. What do you mean? All of them are coming. Snow, Dexter, and Miles, he said. Those were the names assigned to the 3 kings by the researchers. Snow for Baraka, Dexter for Makalai and then Miles for Roku. On the other hand, Leo was called Leo. The name literally means lion, so the researchers thought it was fitting. It was a way for them to affirm Leo's identity as a lion, no matter how different he was compared to others. He was not an unknown beast but a lion. He was Leo. Okay, thank you, he said and put down the phone. You could feel a drop in morale inside the vehicle. So they are already coming towards him. He should know this, right? Why is he not doing anything? Adeyemi asked the concerned experts once more. This time, Hannah answered him after a thought. Young adult males are known to be notoriously bold, reckless, and driven by the burning need to prove themselves, most of the time to their own detriment. It's mostly due to hormones like the spike of testosterone and part instinct. Some experts have even called it an evolutionary drive. It's for this exact reason that the death rate of those dying before reaching 5 years old is more than 80%. They overestimate themselves, trying to take down a buffalo alone, provoking a dominant male, trying to steal from a clan of hyenas, etc. I think Leo also has that recklessness. He wants to test himself and find out his limit. He is smart enough to not do dumb shits but he still put himself in dangerous situations, even if it's unknowingly, she explained. Damn, I guess the girlfriend knows him well, Ramirez commented. Will you ever drop that? She asked in exasperation. No, he replied with a smile. Hannah sighed, causing the others to chuckle at the reaction. Now that you've mentioned it, it does make sense why Leo is acting so bold and reckless. It fits right in with earlier observations of subadult males. Dr. Tonson said and added after a brief pause. It's just hard to wrap my head around the fact that he is still a subadult. That was one of their biggest discovery in the past few months. Leo was not a full-grown adult but a subadult. The kind of lion that was just recently kicked out of their pride. The fact had blown their mind completely. And from the rate he was growing, they suspect that Leo was between the ages of 1.5 years to 3.5 years old, which is the phase in a lion's life where growth is the most pronounced. If not for that, it was beyond natural for him to gain 30 to 40 kilograms of mass in half a year. They had observed his insane appetite and controlled diet of only the best part of the meat. But even with that, the rate of growth was still unimaginable. The only explanation was that Leo was in his prime growth age. Oh no, they are here, Hannah said while covering her mouth. She saw the three kings of the Serengeti approaching Leo from a distance. The reason why they were so worried, even though Leo had grown way beyond the average lion, was that the three kings were not average by any means. The three Mbalai brothers were the most dominant lions in the whole Serengeti landscape. They were so remarkable and exceptional compared to the average lion that researchers were sent to study them. Leo was one of a kind, but so were they. Let's hope nothing bad happens. Statistics say the casualty rate between lions fighting for dominance is extremely low, Hannah said to herself. She had gotten attached to Leo, and the researcher side of her did not want such exceptional specimens to die today. The stats are low because most of the time, the loser runs away and submits when he feels like he's lost the fight, Dr. Tonson said. Do we think Leo would do the same? There was silence. After 6 months of observation, every one of them knew the answer to that question. So there was no reason to voice out the obvious. Well, at least let me make sure I have the greatest shot humanely possible. Malik, please do help me with the drone. And so the humans watched the war unfold. First POV. My blood boiled upon taking in their scent. It's like my body remembered what happened last time, so it knew what was about to happen after smelling that scent. I could hear my heart beating inside my chest. It was calm and of the same rhythm, but the sound was louder. The beats were harder, so much so that I could clearly feel them deep inside my chest. It was like another living being inside my body. My tongue came out and licked the blood off my muzzle. I stared into the distance with eyes full of expectation. And then they came. The lack of trees meant I could see them approaching from far away. The heat of the sun made their figure blur in my eyes. I raised my nose to take in their scent, imprinting the 3 distinct scents in my mind. The smell of my enemies. I made sure to not eat any more meat as they approached me. I learned from experience that a full belly was not suitable for fighting. So the most I did was nibble some more meat. When they finally came close enough, I observed each and every one of them. I focused more on the 2 new lions that I'd never seen before. Baraka, the white lion, was easily distinct among the 3. He looked white from a distance, but on closer inspection, he looked more blonde than white. His mane was absolutely thick and hairy, but that was far from an important observation. He was a giant. I could tell you that much. I believe I have grown a lot in these past few months, but Baraka would still tower over me in sheer size. It was not overwhelming, but he was bigger. Not just his size, but his thick mane and fur gave him a more puffy appearance. He looked bigger than he actually was. Like Shaq wearing 8-inch heels and having an afro. Already big, but the fur adds even more. But as if to boost my morale, my eyes fell on Roku. His face now had scars, and one of his ears was chipped. He looked even smaller than the first time I met him, proving to me that I had grown. Finally, my eyes fell on the last lion, whom I assumed was Makalai. He had even more scars on his face and ears than Roku did. He was noticeably taller and longer than Roku, but I was not smaller than him. Although not the biggest, Makalai caught my attention the longest. There was something very dangerous about him that my instincts were warning me about. If I had to explain how he felt compared to Baraka, he would be a sharp scalpel and the giant would be a baseball bat. A baseball bat should kill you faster, but there was something so unnerving about a sharp, small scalpel. He and Makalai both closed the distance and stood a few meters away from me. On the other hand, Roku stopped in his tracks and was a little far behind. From the shocked expression on his face, I could tell that he had just recognized me. I could understand why. Imagine thinking you fought a hard battle with a full-grown lion, only to meet him again, and this time he was bigger and stronger. The realization that he faltered in front of a cub brought out myriad emotions, shame being the most prominent. Intruder, Baraka was the first to speak. His deep voice and thick mane gave him the image of a royal king. Who are you and why are you here? It was not just me, Makalai also winced at the meaningless attempt to talk. I've heard that Baraka was the gentle one among the three, perhaps he wanted to talk to me and ask nicely for me to leave before starting a fight. What's the use of asking him that? He came into our territory and hunted our prey. Makalai said with bared fangs. I met his aggression by turning my body towards him. I was crouched in front of my prey, but that didn't mean I was not ready. It was quite the opposite, I was ready to explode into action at a moment's notice. We don't want to escalate things, Makalai. The dry season is always tough on everyone, neither party want injury in these dire times, Baraka said, speaking the truth. It was one thing to fight during the wet season when prey was abundant, but to fight during the dry season was just a fool's endeavor. Healing takes proper food and rest after all. Both of which were scarce during the dry season. Why should we worry about injuries when it's 3 against 1? Makalai said, making another solid point. We don't even know if he is a challenger, Baraka said and then asked me, are you? I stayed silent for some time before saying, no. Although I made progress over the past months, I would like more time until I challenge them head-on for dominance over the pride and the land. My current state was that I would fight back when provoked, nothing else. See? He is not a challenger, Baraka said to his brother before turning to me once more. This time, his voice vibrated with a sharp edge. Now, you just have to leave and stay out of our sight. We will keep the rest of your food, he said, and Makalai finally showed a grin at that. Now it was certain that there was going to be conflict. I was not going to give up something of mine again. I would rather die fighting for what I considered to be mine than running again. It was not logical, but it's what my indemnity required. I will never give up something of mine again. Never. But before I could answer, Roku came forward. I don't believe this. It's you. He said, baring his teeth with an enraged face. His two brothers were taken aback by the sheer rage and anger from their brother. Their eyes asked for an explanation, and Roku was quick to give them. That's him, he said, that's Leo. And then something changed. It was like a storm finally settled between us, and the result was set in stone. Oh, I see, Baraka said. A blur. I jumped back in an instant to dodge the white blur of fangs and claws. Baraka, whom I thought to be the most reasonable, was the first to attack me. When he heard who I was, the one who deeply wounded his brother, there was no hesitation in him. His calm before seemed like a thin mask when I looked at his savage expression. But it was the same for me too. The memory of what they did to my home played back in my mind. The same burning rage that consumed me back then bloomed from my heart. It was like the anger was planted there, waiting to explode at the right time. Chapter 52, One Against All. First POV. When the beasts carved by evolution for war clashed, the world could not help but watch with bated breath. The vultures in the sky, the rodents in the distance. Even the herd of impala stopped and stared from a faraway area, along with 2 vehicles, one to document me and the Bailai brothers respectively. All of them became witnesses. A lion against 3 lion kings. How crazy did that sound? Well, it looked even crazier. Baraka crashed down where I once stood, his massive paws crushing the cracked soil between his claws. His wide jaw snapped shut with a clack sound loud enough to be heard. His movement was like a stampede condensed into one body. A cloud of dust exploded under my paws as I leapt back just in time. I landed in a crouching position and my muscles coiled like an armed spring from the momentum. I rocketed out, faster than ever before, stronger than ever before. It was the natural course for a growing lion to always be stronger than yesterday. He flicked back, surprise evident on his enraged face for a split second. He swung his arm at me in a bit of a panic. An awfully predictable move. It's like how you know the untrained person will start the fight with a wild right hook most of the time. I ducked even before he attacked. His swing flew past me with a gust of wind and I lunged at him with renewed force. His attack threw off my aim even though I dodged it perfectly. Instead of the neck, my jaw clamped down on his shoulder. My teeth caught muscle and mane. It was like biting into a boulder wrapped in thick wool. A grunt resounded from his chest as I clamped down. He then twisted violently and pushed me off. There was a flash of shame in my eyes at being shrugged off that easily. If weight was power, then Baraka was Superman. To top it all off, I had bitten down on more mane than flesh, so my bite came off rather easily. At that point, both of us were in each other's range and the next collision came almost like instinct. There was no roar or growl, just a sickening thud of flesh hammering flesh. It was the rawest part of the fight and revealed a lot to me. Baraka was giant. He was giant in terms of everything, be it the length and size of his fangs, his claws, his fur, his skin and even his jaw. But unexpectedly, I was no dwarf either. I boldly went fang to fang and claw to claw with the behemoth of nature. Truthfully, for a lion that went toe-to-toe with a leopard twice his size as a cub, the current size difference was not impressive. It was nothing new. Nostalgic even. Still, I was overwhelmed when it came to the rawest display of power. I let that moment stretch for as long as I needed, so I could know exactly how much. How bigger and stronger was my enemy, and how much longer would it take to surpass him. When I learned what I needed, I shoved him with all the strength I could gather. I pushed him away, but I also pushed myself away. The weight difference between us was around 50 kilograms. He was a whole person more than me. My earlier suspicion was nearly correct. He was not 300 kilograms, but he was really close. That would put me in around the 240 to 250 kilogram range. There was a small pause between us after I pushed him away. We kinda just stayed there, a few meters apart. But that did not last long. Baraka came at me once more. He swung his paw down like a warhammer. And yet I could not feel any threat from his attack. I noticed that his thick fur, while providing great defense from fangs and claws, made him extremely predictable. His fur would flutter with every little movement he made, so if you paid close attention, you could predict him. I slipped his attack with minimal ease and then threw my own attack. My paw arched like a blade and I hit him across the face. My sharp claws dug into his skin and leave a trail of cut on his face. I was aiming for his eyes, but close enough, I guess. The color of blood was easy to spot upon his coat of white. He scrunched his face up and pulled back a little. It was one step back. But that was enough to finally ignite the two brothers into action. They quickly proved that they were not just there for decorations and that nature did not play fair. Macaulay came in like a ghost. He looked way too eager for a lion running into a fight. His sharp teeth were bared with spit flying out due to his momentum. He lunged at me, swift like a blade. I too leapt towards him and we both met in mid-air before we crashed on the ground. We kicked up a cloud of dust in our wake as we tumbled in the sand. I learned quickly why Macaulay gave a very dangerous feeling compared to the others. Macaulay had a reckless way of fighting which was all offense. As we fought, he did not care about defending or controlling the fight. His only aim was to claw at my face or bite at my neck. He abandoned all care for his own health and was focused on destroying mine. It was an unexpected style of fighting. Scar had been too cowardly and Roku was too sane to fight in the same way. Perhaps this was the way most lions fought, full aggression without much of a mind. Due to his aim of only hurting me, I was able to control the flow of the fight as we rolled across the ground. My limbs spread out wide and firm to control the wrestling. Without much effort I was able to pin him beneath me. A nasty snarl came from his throat and he bit down on the side of my head. He did not get my ear, but he got my flesh and mane. His jaw had such a strong hold on me that although I pinned him down, I could not get up. But in such moments my mind was calm. I was not fighting on pure instinct and experience like they were. There was a balance inside me where instinct and mind controlled the fight. I need to thank Roku for that. My claws came out and I dug into his open chest. I pushed down at my paws with all my power and weight. I did not put my paws at the center of his chest but at the edge. So as I pushed down, they slipped and my claws left 4 bloody lines on each side of his chest. There was a small mane that went down his underbelly but that did not cover his sides. So he had no defense. Roar! A roar of pure agony left his throat. Perhaps when he fought other lions, they replied to his aggression with their own aggression. Perhaps when he attacked, they got angry and attacked as well. But not me. You never want to give me such openings because I was smart enough to exploit them. My head snapped down quick and I clamped down at his throat. His roar of agony came out strangled when I did so. The mane and the loose skin stopped me from penetrating but I could choke him with pure bite force. Alas, in a battle of 3 against 1. I did not have the luxury of choking out my opponent. It took too much time. I felt a weight crash down behind me. 2 distinct paws with sharp claws at the tip latched onto both of my sides. And then I felt a crushing bite at the back of my neck. My jaw released Macaulay and my head was pulled back. I roared out in anger and tried to grab behind me but I couldn't reach him. I stood up on my hind legs, trying to get away from the crushing jaw but it followed me. When I stood up, Roku followed by standing up as well and refused to release his bite. He was much shorter than me when we stand so the back of my neck was his limit. I tried to spin around but he followed my actions so that he remained behind me. He could not contend against me in frontal assault the last time we met him. After 6 months, he realized his chances would be even worse. So he was determined to attack me from behind and keep the fight there. I was not able to turn around but that was enough to know which side he was on. I reached behind me with my paws and then I grabbed his mane and part of his skin. For Roku, the world spun. It was no longer possible to keep his jaw shut when he flipped into the air. For me, I simply bent my back and pulled Roku behind my shoulder. He was shorter than me and was already at the tip of his toes trying to keep his hold on the back of my neck. It could not have been easier to pull him off the ground and throw him over my shoulder. A perfect judo throw. Well, as perfect as a lion could do. His back crashed on solid ground with a thud. The air was knocked out of his lungs, causing him to release a silent scream while his eyes rolled behind his skull. When he came back to his senses, he only saw a blur of teeth coming down at him. There was no air to scream, so he released a weird sound while sucking in air. My jaw clamped down on his muzzle from the top. Then I proceeded to thrash around violently to try and tear his face off. I did not commit to my aggression though. I learned from last time that I couldn't focus on one opponent for too long. I released my jaw and then turned around just in time to see Baraka stampeding towards me. I did not have time to gather momentum but I had to meet him head on. I stood on my hind legs when he lunged at me. Our arms hammered against each other as we both cancelled each other's swing. But when we clashed, I was pushed away due to my lighter weight and because I could not create momentum like he did. I rolled on the ground but eventually came to a stop in the same crouching position. My ears folded and my lips were pulled up to show my fangs. I could feel goosebumps all over my body and that caused my mane to puff out, making me look bigger and more dangerous than before. There was no more attack after that. The 3 brothers took their time getting up to their feet. I was also busy catching my breath. When things calm down, that's when you realize how out of breath you really are. A train of growl left my throat like a song. The deep vibration resounded through the surrounding. It was a warning. After the 3 of them stood up, they started circling around me ever so slowly. They did not growl back, simply circled around me to try and initiate the attack. In the meantime, something in my mind clicked into place. My mentality was that of an animal backed into a corner with his life on the line. So when they come, my main priority would be making sure to keep them out of the battle. After one clash, that meant clawing at their eyes, biting at the nose and if I got the chance, tear out their fucking testicles. Chapter 53, They came, and they were forced to leave. Author, double chapter. I think this is the 3rd or 4th week since I have been at the top. Thanks for all your support. First POV. There was palpable tension in the air that was thick enough to cut if you had a really sharp knife. The hot air did not feel like it contained oxygen with how unsatisfying each breath was. A chain of growls left my throat. The constant low vibration was a warning and a threat that they could not just hear but feel in their bones. They stayed silent and did not offer a warning of their own. After all, how could they give out threats when they couldn't do shit when we faced head-on? All three of them circled around me while I remained unmoving in my place. The moment of pause gave us time to observe each other. Makalai was the most wounded among the three. He had attacked me so recklessly that he left his underbelly exposed. He had underestimated me too much and he paid the price in full. 8 cuts spilled out from his inner belly. The cut was not too severe, as lions have loose skin to protect them from such cuts. But the red liquid that spilled out from the cut was bloody. You bleed a lot more than usual while performing heavy activities and when your blood is pumping. So blood dripped out from his wounds and fed the parched ground everywhere he went. Roku was doing much better but didn't look the part. There were cuts and missing flesh on his face. The blood painted his face red, just like mine was. The only difference was that mine was painted from the blood of my prey but the blood on his face was his own. Baraka was the least harmed among the 3 brothers. There was only a small patch of red on his shoulder. The small amount of blood would not be visible had it not been for his white mane. You, tailless abomination! Makalai roared in anger to try and look intimidating, but he only ended up making himself look pathetic. Because even as he talked shit, he wouldn't take even a single step towards me. I told you brother, you don't know how he fights, Roku said in a calm voice while circling me. His words caught my interest briefly. Perhaps Roku had talked to them about me and explained why he couldn't kill me when questioned. But Makalai, being the reckless warrior he was, did not heed his brother's words and tried to pull the same tricks he pulled on other rogue lions, only to find out the hard way that his brother was right and I did not fight like others. I don't want to hear it. Makalai replied to his brother in anger. They continued circling around me but without doing anything else. Every one of them was hesitating. I had replied to their attacks in blood, so no one really wanted to be the first one to jump into the fire. I could not take all 3 of them, that much was obvious to everyone. But the first person I decided to attack would have to pay the price in full. And no one wanted to be the one to pay the price. Roku had fought me once and lost, so he was not mentally there to fight me. Makalai was the fiercest, but he was the most wounded, so he was not physically there to fight me. In the end, it was Baraka who took the first step towards me. Like I expected. I turned my whole existence towards him right then and there. My eyes locked on his and my gaze seemed to pierce through him. I remembered the decision I'd made in my mind, to fight in the most brutal fashion possible. He seemed to sense my killing intent and he froze after taking one step. He stared at me and I dared him. He took a brief pause and I could see his resolve and anger slowly crumbling away to make way for rational thought. He released a long sigh after that. Let's stop for today, he said and immediately, his 2 brothers snapped their heads at him. What are you saying Baraka? We should end him today, before he becomes an even bigger threat. No, continuing this fight will only bring more harm to us than good. Even if we kill him today, it will come at a steep cost that we can't pay. Remember brothers, this is the dry season, Baraka said towards his brothers. Not only is food scarce but we get the most challenges during this season as the nomadic males want to secure the resources in our territory. We can try killing him but the injuries we sustained might lead to our downfall when we encounter the next challenger, or worse, a coalition, Baraka said. We need not take such a risk for a non-challenger, he added. Roku stayed silent and thoughtful before he eventually gave a hard nod. He understood where Baraka was coming from and found it reasonable. Are we really doing this? Makalai asked in disbelief. Baraka gave a nod, we made a mistake, and then he looked at me with a glint in his eyes, but we wouldn't make the same mistake again. After that, Baraka turned around and left to return back to the Pride. Roku followed soon after and finally, Makalai left after taking one final glance at me. Ever since the beginning, this fight did not have much on the line. I was not challenging them or claiming the territories as my own, simply protecting the prey I killed. On their part, the aggression was natural for a male who intruded in their territory and also the grudge they held for what I did to Roku. But all of that was not worth risking their life for. And they knew they were risking their life one way or another after the initial fight of the battle. I watched them disappear from my field of vision, and after they were far enough, I walked back under the shade where my food stayed intact. I carefully lay under the shade to continue feeding. There was a tiny, almost permanent smile on my face as I did so. They didn't realize it, but I learned a lot from that short battle. I learned the areas where I lacked and the areas where I had the upper hand. So when the time comes that I finally challenge them for everything they had, I would do so with confidence and with a clear plan in my mind. Slash 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 slash. Third POV. Holy smokes, that was intense, Ramirez commented while he captured the leaving figure of the three kings of the Serengeti. Yeah, but this fight played out very differently from what I was expecting, Dr. Tonson said while thoughtfully watching the dust settle in the short, intense battle. Are you surprised that they decided to leave so easily after starting the whole conflict? Hannah asked with a curious tilt of her head. You could hear it from her tone that a huge weight was lifted off her shoulders. No, not at all, Dr. Tonson replied. In fact, it is quite common for lions to stop a fight if the risk outweighs the gain. A lion's battle is ritualist to a degree. It's a fight for dominance, not for death. It's why two lions will remain rivals and battle multiple times before the true victor emerges eventually. So it's not that surprises me so. It's the fact that Leo was able to pull this situation against three fully grown lions, Dr. Tonson said while scratching his head. We didn't really question it before in his fight with Roku since we thought Leo was fully grown, but now that we know he is still subadult and still growing, it begs the question. Why do the kings have such a problem when they are way more experienced? It makes no sense, he said. How the hell is Leo holding up against them? No, scratch that, how is he winning? At the beginning of the fight, they thought they were watching their favorite lion getting mauled and brutally murdered. But the battle they just saw said otherwise. Malik, give me the radio, Hannah asked the driver. Adeyemi quickly passed the phone to her, and she connected it to the other group of researchers. Hello, can you tell me the last time the pride ate? Specifically the males, she asked through the walkie-talkie. The person on the other end of the phone stumbled for words. You could hear that they were caught in surprise with what happened as well. Well, they haven't eaten for a while. I'll say it's around 2 weeks since they had food. They did steal some from a leopard and hyenas but those were just scraps, he answered. And were they in some kind of fight recently? Hannah asked once more. No. But we did spot some male lions coming into their territory, he answered. You mean other males besides Leo? How many? It's hard to tell, the dry season is when the rogue males expand their roaming area to find prey. Inevitably, they will come down here since this is the only place with a watering hole and prey flock here, he said and then hummed for a bit. We believe we spotted 4 different male lions here recently, he said in the end. Okay, thank you for the information, Hannah said and turned off the radio. The two research groups had divided and rarely meet these days since Leo and the Serengeti pride live in opposite sides of the region. That explains a few things, Dr. Tonson said. Hannah nodded thoughtfully before she perked up with a different topic. Do you think Leo will ever encounter these rogue males as well? Probably, considering he hunts a lot, the doctor answered with a shrug. I don't know what you guys are saying, but I think it's not that complicated. Leo just fights better than the others, which is awesome. Must have something to do with his weird build. In boxing, southpaws have always had a small edge over orthodox boxers simply because the former are rare and orthodox are not accustomed to fighting left-handed fighters, Ramirez commented thoughtlessly, but he hit right on the nail. Wait. Dr. Tonson said and then blinked owlishly, you might be onto something. Sometimes, a unique perspective is all it takes to find the answer, not an educated perspective. Anyhow, the research crew continued buzzing over their own research and had the time of their life, trying to understand the unique creature called Leo. Chapter 54, What is Prey? First POV. 1 week later. Food was scarce. It's been a week since my encounter with the Bailai brothers and they were probably still recovering from their injuries because I haven't heard from them since. After I ate the impala back then, I've only had one more meal in the passing week. The reason for that was out of my control. The number of viable prey had hit rock bottom in the Serengeti landscape. The remaining animals were in small groups of 3 to 5 so they were constantly on the move and hard to track down. And even if you found them, it was almost impossible to catch them with how cautious they were. The dried grass and leaves did not help in stalking them either. It was hard to move without sound in this condition. And since they were not moving in big herds, it was almost impossible to predict their pattern like I previously did to set up an ambush. All in all, it was a horrible situation in the Serengeti. It had been nearly 5 days since I'd had a meal. I had not gone without food that long since the first time I arrived in the Serengeti. Even with the help of Grim, it was almost impossible to have a successful hunt that often. Opportunities did not rain after all. I was not actually hungry since a lion could go twice as long without needing food, but I did not eat simply to stay alive but to grow as well. My fight with the Bailai brothers taught me just how much I needed to grow. I had to surpass Baraka in size, and that demanded food while I was in my growing phase. It wouldn't matter if I had food later on in my life, I need it now. So that left me frustrated beyond expectation. I wandered around the dry landscape like a beast without purpose. Grim! I growled. There was a choking caw in the sky and I felt a shadow circle around the sky. Not long after, the vulture flew down and stirred up a gust of wind as he landed in front of me. You see anything yet? I asked. Depends on what you define as anything, he replied with a shrug. Anything that I can kill, I said. Afraid not, sire. It's very beautiful from up there, very scenic with the golden grass and all, but nothing that would fancy you. I did see some rodents, warthogs, and a small family of porcupines which I'm sure doesn't interest you much, he said. I groaned in annoyance. You are right. I need meat, not some snacks. You and everyone else, my lord, Grim replied while flapping his wings. Welcome to the Serengeti, long dry season edition. It's famine, fatigue, and fun for the whole ecosystem. Yay! I sighed. Fly further, Grim, and tell me when you find something. Roger, he replied and flapped his wings and propelled himself to the bright sky. Grim circled around the region before flying even higher up in the sky and disappearing from my view. In the meantime, I wandered alone. Eventually, Grim came back a few hours later and told me that a clan of hyenas had just brought down an antelope. I immediately perked up at the news and then I let him guide me immediately. Unfortunately, the sight was further than expected. It took me nearly an hour to reach the place, so by the time I was there, the hyenas were mostly finished with the food. The sound of their sickening laughter was the first thing I heard. I quickened my pace and when they came into view, I spotted around 9 of them near the carcass. They were eating at the remains of the antelope while the other hyenas had ran away with their share. I saw one hyena running with the part of the prey's leg while 2 other hyenas chased him down. But my focus was on the biggest part. I released a growl which immediately got their attention. When they saw me, recognition flashed in their eyes. Their hind legs buckled and their tails pointed down instead of pointing up for a fight. They knew me. This was not the first time I had robbed a hyena. Before, I did it just because, but now I was hungry. I roared and ran to them. My paws beat on the ground as I ran towards them as fast as I could. The hyenas spiraled into panic. Some of them tried to tear a chunk of the carcass while others ran without touching the food. When I reached there, 2 greedy hyenas were still trying to tear off a piece of the carcass, so they bore the brunt of my assault. I swung my paw at the first one. There was an explosion of force and a deep thud, which was swiftly followed by a howl of pain and something cracking. I turned to the other one and bit at his spine. My jaw clamped down shut and easily broke his spine. The hyena became paralyzed on his hind legs and he tried and failed to crawl away from me. Or was it a she? I refer to all hyenas as he because they all have dicks. In your next life, run when you see a lion, I said, and then turned my focus to the eaten carcass. They both tried to crawl away from me and I let them. This must be the fall off of the century, I said while looking at the incredibly unappetizing food before me. The food was even worse than those I abandoned in the past. The remains were bones and skin along with the fats that clung stubbornly to the skin. One look and you could tell they contained no nutrition or protein. That was the type of meal you eat to stay alive and nothing else. It sure is tough when all your prey migrate to another, greener region. Perhaps it would have been better if I had followed them in their migration, I said, thinking in my mind that I should do just that next year. I took a careful sniff at the food and right as I was about to eat and take my first bite, I heard a loud calling sound in the distance. Trumpet. This time it was not a lion's roar but an elephant's trumpet. From the origin of the sound, I could tell that they were far away, so I had nothing to worry about. But I just kinda stayed there, facing the sound and listening to the shrilling cry of the elephant herd. It was like a song, guiding the others. It sounded kind compared to the warning message of a roar. Elephants were one of the animals that did not migrate to other regions during the dry season, including animals like rhinoceroses, warthogs, giraffes, and even buffalo. Wait a minute, I blinked. Those animals are still here. They are not leaving and they will never leave, I said to myself. In fact, I encountered some giraffes on my way here and now I just heard a group of elephants pass by. That meant that there were animals that remained in the region even during the dry season. They were such huge animals that I forgot to even consider them prey. Wildebeest, zebras, antelopes, impalas. I was not limited to those animals at all. So why was I here, moaning about how there was no prey for me to hunt? The biggest ones are still here. This is crazy, ha 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 ha, I said and started laughing out loud at the insane ideas that started popping into my head. I would not allow this dry season to mess up my diet and stunt my growth. I needed to be as big and as strong as I could be. Grim. I roared to the sky. The vulture made circles in the sky before he flew down to me. When he was flying overhead, I told him with a crazy grin. Lead me to the buffaloes. Prey was not a category or a name for a specific group of animals. Prey was what I made other animals out to be. And any animal could be my prey. Chapter 55, Documentary Episode 2, 1. Third POV. The release of the documentary's first episode was nothing short of extraordinary. Leo was already a global superstar through animal edits and social media posts, such as articles in Instagram. He was branded the biggest animal celebrity in the world, earning recognition similar to Harem and Coco the gorilla, Luna the killer whale or Hachiko among the dog lovers. So when the official documentary of Leo dropped, people had high expectations. But even with that, the first episode alone had shattered every expectation. In just 1 week, the documentary surged to the top of streaming charts worldwide. It broke viewing records across multiple platforms, from Netflix, Amazon Prime, Hulu, etc., to other regional networks. It turned out that people were easily intrigued by a badass lion. And that easily turned into an obsession when taking into account Leo's past impact on the internet. And now episode 2 has arrived. The viewership was already eclipsing the first episode, causing many networks to crash. The title of the episode alone already had people in a chokehold. Documentary Episode 2, The Price Against 3 Crowns. Name, Dr. T. Somatonson. Role, Lead Researcher and Ethologist. Nationality, Indian, from Nagaland, Northeast India. Age, 62. It was the 5th day since we had our first encounter with Leo. On that day, we witnessed him hunt for the first time. We were intrigued by his intelligence and his adaptive style of hunting where he could come up with different strategies depending on his prey. The doctor began the episode by briefly recalling what was in the previous episode. It also gave us our answers on how he was able to hunt without a tail. The way his whole body structure had adapted to his disability and made it an advantage instead. We saw how explosive he was during hunting, and he cemented himself as the perfect ambush predator, more successful than any other lion we encountered. But we ended the day with more questions than answers, he said. The scene changed to show Leo after hunting the impala. He was dragging his prey towards the shade of a tree, sparing huge effort as the shade was quite far from the kill. One of the curious things Leo had the habit of doing was dragging his prey towards the perfect spot. It could be a shade, behind a bush or a mound. When it's feeding time, everything has to be perfect for him, Dr. Tonson said over the footage. After Leo brought the impala to the shade, he started tearing through his meal. The footage was clear and vivid since the researchers had the perfect angle to shoot the video. After a few hours of eating, Leo was done with his food and he left the remains of his kill under the shade for the vultures to scavenge. Of course, since he was a lone male, the kill was more than he could finish. He feasted on the best and juiciest part of the carcass and left the unsavory bits of the kill like the stomach, intestines, skin, bones etc. A seemingly normal action that would lead to something disastrous, Dr. Tonson said in a foreboding tone. The camera focused on the innocent remains of the impala and then panned outward to show Leo leaving it behind. The lion came straight towards the camera and passed it with a silent dignity before disappearing again into the horizon. All seems well. Leo went back to his home in the kopje with a full belly. He must have thought he ended the day on a good note and a successful hunt, Dr. Tonson said. But in moments where everything seems right, that's when nature finds a way to create chaos. We will all find out soon enough that such peace does not exist in the unforgiving land of the Serengeti, he said. The footage changed to an aerial shot of Leo as he reached his home. He climbed up his hill with the gentle firmness of a contented beast, and then he slept in his usual spot, which was in the small cave on top of the hill. Like usual, we sent a drone to take videos so that we could study him without too much disturbance. On the other hand, we still remained at the killing site. The slight elevation of that area was quite nice, so we were thinking of setting up a camp there, Dr. Tonson said. But then he came. The scene finally cuts to a lion. But this time, it was not the tailless beast that we had come to learn as Leo. Instead, the video showed a lion king fully grown and in his prime, slowly making towards them. This was the first time this character was introduced, so the camera slowed down and captured in detail how the lion moved. The slight twitch of the ears, the flickering mane of thick brown and then black. The muscles that pulled and rolled with every step he took. Indeed, this was not Leo, the main star of the show. But it was still one of the most majestic animals on the planet. A symbol of royalty, pride, and power. One of the three dominant kings that ruled the Serengeti region. Perhaps it was fate that he had patrolled this exact path and at this exact time, Dr. Tonson said. The king found the remains of the impala which Leo had left behind. And one sniff was enough to catch the scent of an intruder. All of a sudden, Leo caught the attention he should never have, and we all knew something big was brewing on the horizon. The scene showed Roku curiously sniffing the remains. The smell of another lion was easy enough to decipher for his powerful nose. His eyes shift from the carcass towards the sky, and then Roku released a thunderous roar. It was the start of the war between Leo and the three kings of the Serengeti. It was a bloody war that spanned over 2 years and ended with only one lion standing. Name: Hannah Park. Role: zoologist and big cat specialist. Nationality: Korean American, from Seattle. Age: 34. We mentioned this before previously, but our meeting with Leo was by chance and our early research a coincidence. The reason why all those fundings, people and equipment were in the Serengeti was to study the pride led by these three kings. The researchers named them Snow, Dexter and Miles, Hannah explained to the audience. The screen showed the three kings of the Serengeti and the researchers that were constantly studying them from a distance. And it was the lion we named Miles that found the remains. He was one of the smartest lions we've ever observed in the wild, so there was no way that he could have just ignored such an obvious clue. Had it been any of the other kings, they would just ignore it, but this specific lion was too intrigued by the fact that a predator left such good remains, and the scent was the final nail to the coffin. He started tracking Leo down almost immediately, Hannah said. The documentary showed a footage of Roku, named Miles by researchers to honor the first man to photograph him, curiously sniffing the remains before tracking the scent on the ground like a dog. After a few sniffs, Roku followed the exact path that Leo took to get back to his home. It was like he could see the past with how accurate he was at tracking. Before we continue this, I want to give a short summary of what we knew of the three kings of the Serengeti. The three kings were blood brothers sired by the same dominant male. We believe they came from the southern fringe of the Serengeti and came down all the way over here after they were kicked out of their pride, Hannah began explaining. In their youth, the three brothers went on a campaign of conquest. They were bold and reckless like every young lion, but unlike others, they had the strength to save them from these reckless tendencies. Every one of them could be said to be superior in genes compared to the average lion, especially Snow and Dexter. They were extraordinary, formidable even alone. But what made them a true force of nature was the fact that they were in a coalition. A 2-lion coalition was already uncommon, but a 3-lion coalition was a rarity, she said. They were first observed by a photographer in their sub-adult days. It was during this time that they began their conquest. In total, they killed 6 different lion kings and took over 4 different prides. The territory they occupied now used to be shared among 4 different prides, which is the reason why it's extremely large and Leo could remain unnoticed for a good while even in their territory, she said, and then a map was shown to accentuate her points. They drove off every lion in their territory and took everything for themselves. It's why their pride remains one of the biggest in the whole Serengeti, with 30 members and nearly half of them being fully grown lionesses. But as they grew old and became wiser, they stopped their campaign of conquest. It was also around this time that researchers were sent to study them in their own habitat, she said. The scene cut to a massive stretch of savanna with lionesses hunting, cubs playing, and the 3 brothers lounging on top of a massive rock like the kings they were. With that being said, you could understand how we felt when one of them finally tracked down Leo in his home in the copy. Leo, whom we thought at that time was a normal adult without a tail, although remarkable, would not have survived an encounter with one of them, she said. We followed the king as he slowly made his way to Leo. We were determined to get the full footage of the first confrontation between these two. Although we thought it would not end well with Leo, we were itching to see how he would fare against the king. How he would fight in his tailless self, she said. The scene finally cuts to said confrontation. It was early in the night with the sky painted with endless stars because the moon was barely visible on that night. The footage had a greenish hue as the camera used night vision to take the video. It was too dark to capture anything with a normal camera. Leo came down and stood in front of the king. They both remained at a distance from each other until the king made the first move by circling around Leo. We thought for sure he would try to run, but Leo didn't give an inch. There was a pause. The lions were silent before they both erupted in beastly growls that shook the ground with its vibration. Little did we know, we were witnessing not the death of a rogue male in the hands of a king, but the first step towards the complete erasure of a legacy. Image. Author, that will be all for this week. See you the day after tomorrow. Comment. 35 Comment. Vote. Chapter 56, Documentary Episode 2, 2. Third POV. Name, Dr. T. Somatonson. Role, Lead Researcher and Ethologist. Nationality, Indian, from Nagaland, Northeast India. Age, 62. Let me start by saying it is extremely uncommon for a dominant king to pick a fight. The only time a lion king would fight is if his pride and territory were on the line. He would rarely attack a rogue lion unprovoked. After all, the king had everything to lose, and he could not take a risk, Dr. Tonson said. It's why they marked their territory using scent, roared and patrolled daily. They want to ward off challengers without it boiling down to a fight every single time, Dr. Tonson said. The clips showed lions doing the mentioned activities. The three kings patrolled and roared towards the sky to announce their presence and dominance in their kingdom. They marked trees and bushes using their excrements and urine. But the three brothers were in a coalition and their pride was unlike other prides that were ruled by only one king. This very much causes changes in their behavior, which was one of the reasons why they were worth studying in the first place, Dr. Tonson said while making hand gestures. You could see that he was talking about something he was truly passionate about. The brothers were more violent towards rogue males, adopting the strategy of chasing them out or sometimes killing them instead of letting the threat grow. They have the privilege to do so because they were such powerhouses together. Most of the time, there was virtually no risk or effort in the three prime lions killing one young male, Dr. Tonson said. So Leo could be said to have lucked out when only one of the three brothers found him in his home. Should I put it that way when it was unlucky he was found in the first place? Maybe it is better to put it like this, the situation was not the worst that could have happened, he said with a chuckle. The footage cuts to the one with a greenish tone to show that it was taken with a night vision camera. Leo and Roku were having a standoff and the tension could be felt through the video. It was not something that needed to be said, the subtle body language displayed by both animals was enough to explain the current situation. The older lion was making a semicircle around the younger lion who stood still and unmoving. You could see here that the king is displaying a generous amount of patience towards Leo. The way he walked around him is kind of a warning to ask him to back away or submit before it escalates into a fight, Dr. Tonson explained over the footage. Although I said the three brothers were very aggressive towards rogue males, this time Miles is alone and without his brothers. You can see from his body language that he is not showing extreme aggression at the start. But as time went on and Leo showed no submissive behavior, the king became angry, he said. Although there is no hard proof for this, I believe the reason why the king became impatient so quickly and attacked first is likely because he views Leo as weak. Leo's body is deceiving, he is the size of a fully grown lion, and the two lions look about the same size. But Leo is thought to be around 2 years old here, not a full-grown adult. So the mix of his juvenile scent and his lack of tail likely made him appear weak to the king, he said over the video. So the king, Miles, here is probably thinking something along the lines of, who the fuck does this young punk think he is? Let me slap some sense into him, Dr. Tonson said, doing an impression of the lion. I truly believe we all were on the same boat here, researchers and the Lion King alike. We never thought Leo would go as far as he did. After that, the explanation was over. The sound of the actual footage became louder and the documentary was completely silenced to show the whole fight without any voiceover or comment. What followed next was pure action that seemed to come straight out of a movie. The fight between Leo and Roku was cleaned and perfectly edited to be packed with action and no pause. But even with that, the fight was around 10 minutes long. During this time, there was no comment or any other disturbance from the researchers. The viewers were given the chance to behold the fight in its truest essence. It was raw and intense like nature intended. Only after the whole footage was played did the documentary continue and experts started analyzing the small details that the viewers might have missed while watching the fight. Name, Dr. Marcus E. Velt. Role, Comparative Anatomist, Big Cat Specialist. Institution, University of Pretoria Department of Wildlife Physiology. Nationality, South African. Age, 47. Marcus appeared in his lab once more with a stupid grin on his face. You could tell with one look that the doctor was excited to share his knowledge and explain just how incredible and awesome the fight they just witnessed was. Okay, at this point we have all heard a lot about how unique of a beast Leo actually is. It might already be annoying to some of you to hear the same thing over and over again. Yes, we know how his body adapted to his lack of tail, yes, we know how he adapted his hunting strategy to suit his style of movement, blah 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 everything it's all great, Marcus said while walking slowly towards the camera while the footage zoomed out so that he never actually came close. He took a long breath and then paused to stare at the camera. But what if I tell you that the greatest advantage that he had gained due to his uniqueness was not in hunting, he said, and the grin on his face widened to borderline creepy. It is not in running, jumping, strength, size or anything that you can think of either. Although his unique build benefits all these attributes, they are not the ones that have gained the most, he said. In actuality, Leo has the greatest advantage when it comes to fighting. The scene changed to show a CGI display of Leo and other lions to compare him to. The virtual figures rotated to show a 360-degree perspective, while many texts point at specific parts of the body. They highlighted Leo's bigger posterior chain, his multifidus, deltoids, and different parts of his body that were slightly different compared to the average lion. The difference could be in size, flexibility, toughness, etc. Let us think of some of the greatest fighters that ever lived in the history of this world. People who are a cut above the rest, superior warriors, someone who is like Superman when compared to the average man, Marcus said over the CGI images and videos. When it comes to striking, let us take a look at the legendary Iron Mike Tyson. No one, and I mean no one, came even close to this man when he was in his prime. Many would argue that Mike Tyson in his absolute prime could take any boxing figure history has ever produced, Marcus said, but why is that? And why am I bringing up this human fighter when we are talking about a lion here? After all, lions and humans have very different physiology. I am bringing this up because although a human and a lion could not have been more different in body, what makes them superior when it comes to violence and fighting is virtually the same. Explosive kinetic chain coordination, maximization of force output in minimal motion, reaction speed, anatomical control etc., he said before pausing and thinking for a bit. Which is basically my nerdy way of saying explosiveness, technique, fight IQ, unique build, etc., he rephrased his own words. Let's start with being explosive. People often mistake being explosive to being fast or strong when in actuality, it's a bit of both. The talent to be strong and fast in a short amount of time can be said to be explosive. For example, Usain Bolt is fast but that will not be any use when fighting in the ring. Mike Tyson on the other hand was explosive, it's very similar to being quick but he also had power behind his speed, Marcus said, showing a brief fight of Mike Tyson exploding into power and knocking down his opponents. In a similar way, Leo is explosive. This has helped him immensely while hunting because he can go from zero to full speed in a very short time. It is perfect for his ambush style of hunting. It doesn't matter if his prey can run twice as fast if he caught them before they could reach their top speed. But even more so than when he hunts, this explosiveness has helped him when it comes to fighting, Marcus said, and the CGI highlighted parts of Leo's body that helped with his explosiveness. The scene cuts back to the footage of the fight between Roku and Leo. This time the greenish video was slowed down to show the first clash of the fight. Roku was the first one to attack. He circled around Leo before he suddenly burst into action. He ran straight towards Leo, gathering speed and momentum while doing so. On the other hand, Leo was slower to react since he did not attack first. Roku had already reached the halfway point when he began his charge. But even with that significant time and distance loss, he was able to match all the heat that Roku was bringing with him. They clashed with roar and thunder. The result was rather surprising. Leo was not only able to match Roku, who had all the advantage in this first collision, but he was able to overpower the reigning king. The slow-motion footage zoomed on Roku's face, which dropped hilariously when he was pushed back. It went from an angry face that showed full teeth to a frown that seems to say, "What the fuck is this?" The king was baffled, and rightfully. The Lion King Miles. He weighs around 200 kilograms when this fight happened. And so after taking into account his mass, the distance, and speed, we calculated the force he generated to easily exceed 9,000 newtons. But Leo was able to tank this much force and push it back while having about only a quarter of the distance and half the time, Marcus said, audible in his voice. For reference, 9,000 newtons of force is enough to kill a human no matter how you receive it. From the front, the back, the side, or the head. It is also around 3 times more powerful than a tackle of NFL players. How the fuck was Leo able to generate that much force in such a short distance and short amount of time? He asked himself, and the viewers. For a second, his pupils dilated and he turned to look behind the camera. I can curse, right? The crew seemed to give him a thumbs up, so Marcus focused back on the camera. Okay, where was I? Oh yes, how can Leo generate such force? Well, we have to take a look at how both lions start their charge. The footage rewound and this time, it focused on Roku's footwork as he exploded into action. Another CGI video was played that followed his exact action. Roku used his hind legs to push himself forward and then he landed on his front legs and he used those again to pull himself forward while his hind legs were in mid-air. In that sense, he was running in a rhythm of 2 limbs at a time. Now look at Leo. This time it showed the slow motion of Leo running towards Roku. But unlike the king, Leo used all his limbs to push and pull himself forward simultaneously. The CGI video clarified this distinction even more. That right there is what I said earlier, maximum force generated with minimal motion. In fighting terms, the explosiveness of a fighter. If Leo had been wiser and experienced like Roku was, the king would have lost right then and there. It's fortunate that he met a juvenile version of Leo, in both mind and body, Marcus said in a low tone. The doctor continued analyzing the fight and breaking them down in detail. His expertise on wildlife physiology shone as he was able to make the science behind the fight both engaging and intriguing for the viewers. He showed the claws of both lions, explaining how they were made to tear flesh and latch on their prey. And how the lions developed loose skin to protect themselves from such claws. He gave metrics to each attack in the fight. How hard Leo was hitting with his paws, how hard he was tugging when he was pulling and how much force he was biting with. He also gave examples on how much more powerful the lions were compared to humans. The weakest swing of their paws was around twice a boxer's power punch. They were pushing each other with almost 4 times more force than sumo wrestlers. It was the kind of comparison and exaggeration that was just enough to entertain the viewers and keep them amazed. Oftentimes, it was hard to comprehend just how much more powerful these creatures were compared to humans. One other thing I want to mention is the advantage Leo had over any other lion that ever lived and fought. Again, it has to do with his unique build and style of movement, Marcus said, his eyebrows rising a bit more than usual whenever he was explaining something that really interested him. More so than those repetitive comparisons and math. Let us compare it again to Mike Tyson as this has something to do with fighting in general. A unique build is extremely advantageous to a fighter when facing an opponent. Mike Tyson was very short for a heavyweight. Now on paper this seems like a disadvantage, but in actuality, it was the greatest blessing he could ever get. You see, most fighters trained their whole life to punch straight or to punch up. They spent countless hours practicing to punch that way and the muscle memory was ingrained in their body. But when they faced Mike Tyson, they had to punch down something they were not used to, Marcus said. In that scenario, it doesn't matter if you practice 100 years on a punching bag. You never learned how to punch down. Tyson was also very much aware of this, which is why he would crouch down to make his head even lower than it already was. In this manner, he was able to negate the experience of his older opponents and become the youngest heavyweight champion in the world. To make this even worse for the others, the peekaboo style which Tyson mastered was a fairly new style of boxing invented by his coach. This made Tyson not only unique in build but also in style, Marcus said and made a small pause after that. And now circling back to Leo, it was the exact situation for him as well. His unique build and style were unlike anything the older king had seen before. There was no way to prepare for it, train for it, unless you are fighting him. This gives him an edge in his fight against Miles as we see in the footage. The king tried to fight Leo like other lions and failed almost every single time. His experience was becoming a weakness rather than a strength in the fight, Marcus finished, making his point across to the viewers. The audience was understanding more and more just why Leo was so strong and special. It was not just because he was lucky or was the main character, all these small things were stacking up to push him way above his peers. There was a reason behind his strength. It was not magic. Marcus continued explaining the fights and the viewers were looking at everything in a new perspective. It was one thing to listen and another to listen and understand what was being said. But that understanding soon came to a halt as one shocking thing happened in the footage. A body slam, as if they were watching a wrestling match rather than a lion fight. Right. Marcus was all smiles as he witnessed the scene for the nth time. It would never cease to amaze him even if he watched 1,000 times. Ladies and gentlemen, there is no use playing ignorant or skeptical. What you just witnessed was a sense of leverage, fight IQ, and technique in the mind of a wild beast. Something like that is not possible otherwise, Marcus said slowly while replaying the body slam in slow motion. Fighting is not just about the body but also the mind. We have heard quite a lot about Leo and his body and build, now let us take a peek into his mind. Chapter 57, Documentary Episode 2, 3. Name, Dr. Marcus E. Velt. Role, Comparative Anatomist, Big Cat Specialist. Institution, University of Pretoria Department of Wildlife Physiology. Nationality, South African. Age, 47. Intelligence. I speak the truth and only the truth when I say that this is the most greatest observation we make on Leo. Everything that makes him unique or special can trace back its source to his intelligence and eerie awareness. Marcus said while standing in front of the camera. And this intelligence directly translates to fight IQ for Leo when he is in a fight. It is perhaps one of the greatest advantages that a fighter can have over his opponent, Marcus said, and the scene changed once more to show the footage of Leo vs Roku. The footage was moved away to occupy half of the screen and the video played in slow motion. Meanwhile, a CGI version of the fight was also played in the remaining half of the screen to show more details than the blurry footage. Leo understood techniques and leverage, Marcus said, while the CGI zoomed at the precise moment Leo clashed with Roku and the younger lion grabbed the body of the king and body slammed him on the ground. The ability to manipulate your opponent using body weight, positioning, and sometimes even their own momentum, that is what leverage means in the context of fighting, and Leo understood that, Marcus said. This is not the only instance that we saw him use leverage, either, Marcus said while pointing at the screen where the fight continued playing. If you looked closely, you could see how Leo was using the momentum of his opponent to throw them or sometimes even lift them off the ground. And techniques, he said. Leo was shown swinging his paw at the opponent. But unlike normal lions that aim to tear at their opponent or aim to gouge out their eyes, Leo was slapping them and hitting them as if he were a tiger. There is no tradition or way you should fight for him. He will find the most effective way to hurt his opponent and that is how he will fight, he said. At last, the video showed Leo biting at the tail of Roku and punishing him for having the limb. The king tried in vain to fight back but he did not have anything to bite as Leo had no tail. That was also one way of showing how he was literally built for fighting. The tail was one of the greatest weaknesses an animal could have in a fight. Fighting dogs often had their tails cut because of this exact reason. A tail was useful for balancing when running or moving, but in a fight, it was only a hindrance. There is much to discuss, but that will be all for my analysis, Marcus said, and the CGI screens and videos stopped. The camera panned back and focused solely on him in the lab. He joined his hands behind his back and walked a few steps towards the camera. And as you see, ultimately the fight between the king and the prince ended in a draw. In nature, there can never be a fair fight and all factors are at play. Just that evening, Leo had eaten a full meal, Marcus said. You might be wondering how that affects Leo in a fight, so I will explain it briefly. After having a meal, the body directs blood and energy towards the stomach and intestines to focus on digestion. This means that the muscle had less blood than usual, which caused Leo to tire faster. The constant compression of the abdominal muscles also results in nausea and vomiting. Although no severe injuries were inflicted upon him, the battle took a toll on Leo, and the fight ended in a draw. But this fight, like we mentioned before, was only the start of a greater war. Name, Dr. T. Somatonson. Role, Lead Researcher and Ethologist. Nationality, Indian, from Nagaland, Northeast India. Age, 62. After the fight with one of the kings of the Serengeti Pride, Leo returned to his home to rest for the night. The very next day, the two brothers of the king came to Leo's home. But fortunately for our lion, that took place while he was out wandering around the watering hole, Dr. Tonson said, his hand moving to create gestures as he told about the aftermath to the viewers. The two kings marked the copy with their scent and left before sundown. This would mark the end of the conflict between the coalition and Leo for the next 6 months, which is half a year, he said. The day after the battle took place, we had the chance to check Leo for his injuries, Dr. Tonson said, and the video of Leo climbing up to the research vehicle to check on the humans was shown. The doctor had a fond smile on his face while he looked at the scene. Yeah, that was our second close encounter with Leo. Perhaps we had piqued his curiosity since we were closer to him than usual. He came to us and observed us closely, one after the other, he said. We were quite relieved to find out that Leo suffered no fatal injuries other than minor scratches and bite wounds. If we compared his injuries to that of his opponent, the winner of the fight was clear. But what we also find were countless old scars upon his body, he said, and the video showed Hannah spreading Leo's fur to show the scars on his body briefly. Scars were not rare on a lion, but Leo had them everywhere on his body, even in places where he had a mane. We knew that it was unnatural and there was no doubt a story behind every lining scar on his body, but we had come too late to find out exactly how he got those, he said and rubbed his chin thoughtfully. Since Leo was only around 2 to 3 years old at that time, the scars must have come from when he was only a cub. This led me to theorize that perhaps Leo's pride was taken over by a new male, and the king tried to kill him at one point, as he was only a cub. But Leo somehow survived that. It would also explain why he lost his tail, but that is just a theory of mine. Every researcher who followed Leo had a theory of their own on what his cubhood was like, he said with a chuckle. I really like my theory and think it's the most plausible one. Imagine a lion that was forced to fight a king when he was a cub. A lion made to slay kings, he said in a voice more dramatic than before. Anyway, after the big fight happened, we continued our research on Leo. This time, we reported to our company and even managed to get funding, which is separate from the ones meant for the Serengeti Pride and its 3 kings. He said, the higher UPS were really interested in what we have found about Leo so far, and his story had intertwined with one of the 3 kings, so it was not that hard to secure the order. And so the next 6 months passed by rather quickly. Every day we spent studying Leo brought about new discoveries, big and small. Luckily for us and Leo, no major event happened during that half a year. Therefore, Leo could finally settle into his normal habit and we could watch him peacefully, Dr. Tonson said. The screen changed to show a time lapse of 6 months. It showed Leo's life in the Serengeti and the researchers that followed him around like loyal guard dogs. It showed some spectacular shots of Leo hunting and fighting with other predators that were in the region. It was a seemingly normal time lapse of Leo's life, but something was greatly obvious in the video. No one needed to point it out, but Leo was getting bigger and more muscular as the video went on. Not only that, but his mane grew darker in color, his face settled into a meaner and more dangerous expression, and you could notice vividly the maturity that was shown in his body language. The lion shown at the beginning of the video and the end were completely different. If not for the lack of tail and the unique build, people could definitely pass it off as 2 completely different lions. When you looked at the current Leo, you could immediately notice how juvenile he looked half a year back. It was like watching a teenager go through puberty, which was not completely wrong in a sense. Perhaps one of the biggest discoveries we made during this time was the stark difference between Leo's lifestyle compared to that of ordinary lions. First of all, let us talk about diets. Dr. Tonson said. You can see it yourself, the insane amount of growth that Leo experienced throughout the short span of 6 months. To be more specific, we estimate Leo to have grown about 50 kilograms in sheer mass during half a year. It would be a bit more realistic if it was fats and other things, but what made this even more significant is that almost all the size Leo gained is clean muscle. That is unheard of in a lion, even at a growing age, bordering on impossible, he said. The screen showed the CGI images of Leo's body. One of them was his size when they first found him, around 200 kilograms. The next image is significantly bigger at around 250 kilograms. 250 kilograms was already a giant for an African lion, but Leo was still growing. And for Leo to gain this much mass in such a short time, he had to eat a lot of food and engage in many activities. During our observation, we found out that Leo was hunting down fresh prey every 3 days. That is equal to the amount of times female lions hunt for their pride when they have multiple members and cubs, Dr. Tonson explained. The scene changed to show Leo hunting many times over the expanse of half a month. An impala, a wildebeest, a zebra, a baby buffalo, an antelope, etc. The videos were short but vivid. The shots of later hunts were much better than the earlier ones to show the improvement of the cameraman and how the researchers were starting to know his hunting patterns. In total, Leo hunted down 57 prey in the span of half a year. Compare this to the Serengeti Pride, which has a total number of around 30 members, with half of them being adult. They hunted down 122 prey in total during the same span of half a year, he said. The screen showed the statistics of hunts between Leo and the Serengeti Pride. If you did not know better, you would think that the graph was showing and comparing 2 unique lion prides in different regions. There was also one thing in particular that caught the viewer's attention. It was the success rate of both observations. Leo had a hunting success rate of 70% as a lone lion, while the pride that hunted in groups had a success rate of 51%. In terms of kilograms of meat consumed, Leo was eating the food worth around 6 to 7 Serengeti lions by himself. Do take a moment to comprehend just how insane that was, he said, taking a moment of pause as he too looked at the statistic showed on screen. But of course, the amount of prey he killed is just one part of the whole picture. What was really intriguing was his diet. Among the prey that he killed, Leo only really ate the organs and the best parts of the meat. The rest, he will leave it to other scavengers to consume. That is also one of the reasons why his kill count is insanely high. He doesn't eat his prey in their entirety, only the best parts, Dr. Tonson said. He never filled himself up with fats or skins. It's like he knew even his appetite was limited, so he fed himself the best parts. He ate the organs like liver, lungs, heart, kidneys, etc. After that, he would feed on the muscle in the hind legs, the loins, and finally the shoulders. He usually found himself full when he ate the loin and shoulder, he said. The screen showed the parts of the muscle on the prey that Leo liked to feast on. His diet could not have been better for both growth and strength. It's like how bodybuilders stick to a specific diet to maximize growth, he said. But the question still remained how Leo could eat so much. How could he eat the amount of food for 7 lions when he was not even 7 times their size? The answer lies in activity. Lions loved sleeping, cuddling, or lazing around when they had free time. This allowed them to conserve their energy. But Leo was the opposite. Other than sleeping at night, he was always engaged in activities. There was rarely a day when he simply lazed around to do nothing, he said. There is no better way to say it. Although unbelievable, Leo was an animal that trained. Chapter 58, Documentary Episode 2, 4. Third POV. Name, Dr. T. Somatonson. Role, Lead Researcher and Ethologist. Nationality, Indian, from Nagaland, Northeast India. Age, 62. Leo trains. Although not exactly fulfilling the meaning of the word, animals do train in the wild. They have to pick up the skills and go through physical conditioning to survive. Predator cubs learn to stalk and fight, birds, especially those that hunt, train their flying skills and dive, wolves are observed to train coordination and teamwork, etc., Dr. Tonson explained. But we ever only see these types of things when the animals are juvenile, not when they are already adult. We've mentioned how intelligent Leo is, and it seemed the concept of training stuck with him ever since he was a cub. He knew very well that the act of repetition was a clear way of getting better and stronger. The scene changed to show Leo training in the passing month. The way of his training varied, and some might mistake it for a lion doing normal things. But the fact that he was doing these every day without any particular reason proved that he was indeed training. The activities varied. He would sprint uphill, only to come down and run up the same hill again. Sometimes he would run across a strong flowing river, resisting the current to strain his muscles, and he would repeat it many times. One other activity that he indulged in heavily was the act of dragging his prey to far distances before eating. He would also steal the foods of other predators even though he ate just the day before. He would drag their prey as far as he could, or sometimes climb a tree and put it there for no solid reason. He was particularly fond of putting the food of hyenas in trees or somewhere inaccessible, Dr. Tonson said. The scene showed the respective footage of each training method. It shows Leo sprinting up hills, dragging prey, or fighting with other predators. One footage in particular caught the eyes of the viewers. Leo was running across a river with a strong current. It was during the wet season, and although Leo was huge, you could see that he was actually being forced back by the current. It was a very dangerous and reckless method of training when the river was that strong. One crocodile even came close to Leo, thinking the lion was drowning. The crocodile attacked him and they disappeared into the river. There was a violent splash in the water for a while before it disappeared completely. After that, Leo came back on shore while dragging the crocodile. His teeth were clamped down on the back of the crocodile's head, his fangs penetrating the skull. Of course, the activities I've mentioned so far were just some of many. They are the ones that stood out to us because normally, a lion would avoid all of those activities. The uphill sprinting worked his leg and spinal muscles, dragging heavy prey for long distance worked the back and forearm muscles, so on and so forth. The fact that he was eating so much food compared to other lions and him dragging his prey also increased his bite force to insane heights, Dr. Tonson said. The screen showed a clear picture of Leo and how these so-called trainings helped in overdeveloping his muscles. Even through the loose skin that should not reveal muscle definition, his body looked sculpted when he moved. He also trains to sharpen his skills as well. His frequent hunting, or his act of swinging his paws at the leaves of bushes as if training the accuracy of his strike are some examples, he said. The screen shifted through the incredible footage of Leo that the researchers had taken over the course of half a year. The episode was stretching at this point, so not everything could be showed to the viewers. We can't show all the amazing things that we captured in this short episode, so if you want to access these raw footages, you can go to our website thickengarchive.com, he said, and the link to the website was also shown on screen. The incredible raw footages they captured during this short time were too wasteful to remain unseen by the public. So the production team wanted to put them out there for everyone to see. Leo spent the 6 months like that, eating as much as he can and training whenever he can. He was like a lion with a mission, completely driven by something because there was no reason to display such activities otherwise, he said. Well, we found out what was driving him, but that story is for another day and another episode. Time passed quickly when you are so engaged, and before we even knew it, the dry season came. The screen showed a time-lapse of the Serengeti. The land changed from its lush green savanna to a land that was mostly filled with dry grass and sand. The rivers dried out, leaving a muddy watering hole in their wake. The animals that would graze and wander through every inch of the Serengeti disappeared. The herds moved in number of thousands, and they were leaving the land in search of greener place. Their hooves stirred up sand and they looked like a living sandstorm from above. The dry season in Serengeti is rough and unforgiving. The rains stop around May and the change is drastic from then on. Within weeks, the grasses that once blanketed the plains begin to yellow and vanish. Surface water evaporates fast due to the heat, and nearly 90% of seasonal watering holes dry up by mid-June. We measured rainfall in March at around 130 millimeters. By July, it was less than 5 mm. It was not a gradual shift, it was cliff. The animals living in these regions suffer this change in full. Animals die from dehydration. Most herbivores have no food to eat, so they migrate. If they don't move fast enough, they die of hunger. The screen showed the dry season and its consequences in full. A group of zebras collapsed due to dehydration. A multitude of animals fight over rivers that were now reduced into puddles. Elephants dig the land which was once a pool, only to get wet mud which did not quench their thirst but only worked to cool them down when they applied it on their skin. And it was not just herbivores either, the predators suffered as well. Due to the migration, predators lack prey to hunt. Their success rate can drop as low as 8% during the dry season. It was obvious to us immediately that Leo would not be able to maintain his huge diet during the dry season, and we were quite eager to see how he deals with this. At this point, we were used to being surprised by him, the doctor said. The lack of prey got to such a point that Leo and the Serengeti pride and its kings encountered in one of their hunt. We've said this before, but the territory of the Serengeti pride was huge, so much so that 4 other prides could exist in this region. Leo and the pride never meet during the 6 months. But as the dry season reached its peak, resources were scarce and they met when they tracked down the same herd of antelope. Finally, the screen showed Leo in the same footage with other lions. Leo was a lone male and it was rare to see him with other lions. And when he was hanging with the lionesses during a hunt, it finally struck the viewers just how giant and beastly Leo looked compared to them. Leo was not only long but he was wide. His muscles rippled and were in full display when he moved as the skin tightened around the body. One look was enough to know that he was a moving raw power and strength. And in this encounter, Leo and the 3 kings of the Serengeti met once more. This was the second time Leo and the kings come into conflict. The footage showed Leo tearing open his prey under a shade. After a while 3 male lions came to disturb his peace. There was immediately tension in the air and there was no longer comments from the researchers. The raw sound of the confrontation was the only sound in the footage. The white lion, Snow, immediately caught the attention of the viewers for being a giant. He was even bigger than Leo, although the lone male remained the more impressive one. It was like seeing a normal big and fat man with a smaller man who had a ripped body. The confrontation did not last long. The 3 lions tried to scare off Leo and chase him out of the area, but Leo did not budge. In the end, the standoff resulted in a short fight where Leo was able to fight on equal ground with the 3 brothers. Although brief, the result of the clash was bloody. But when the dust settled, Leo remained unharmed. The 3 kings of the Serengeti were forced to leave Leo alone, having to find out the hard way that it was not worth the fight. Leo was not some pushover that they could bully anymore. He was a lion stronger than every one of them if it came down to a 1 vs 1 fight. It was an interesting confrontation between lions. We can observe how smart these animals are. They are not just pure aggression, they know when to fight and when to back off. The dry season was no time to pick unnecessary fight, they all know they need to conserve the energy to survive instead. It was also a very pleasant surprise that Leo was able to hold his ground against the three kings. I think no one expected that when it happened, although it might be expected now after having seen everything that he would accomplish in the future, he said. The scene briefly showed Leo finishing his prey under the shade and then cuts to the Serengeti pride eating their own prey. Although the conflict may have passed, the challenge of the dry season remained. With the amount of prey decreasing every day due to migration, how would Leo deal with this problem? We thought that there was a very big chance that Leo would try to take over the Serengeti pride since he had shown his prowess and lack of fear for the kings. We thought perhaps he would side with the many lone males that were wandering in the region and overthrow the current kings. If not that, we thought Leo was intelligent enough to follow after the migrating prey in order to secure his food source, he said. But no. Leo did none of that, Dr. Tonson said and shook his head. A smile teased his lips, as if he was aware of a joke that no one knew. In hindsight, the solution to his problem seemed obvious, he said and trailed off briefly. Leo started moving to bigger preys. He began hunting the animals that did not migrate during the dry season. Mainly, the buffaloes. This time, Dr. Tonson could no longer hold back a laugh. We thought Leo had made impossible progress during the past 6 months. How could we not, after all he was able to gain 50 kilograms of mass in such a short time. But the progress he made after changing his diet to the buffaloes borderline that of supernatural. The insane effort to take down even one buffalo coupled with their higher quality meat was a catalyst to the greatest period of growth in his life. I think I speak for everyone when I say we were not ready, not by a long shot, for the things that we witnessed during this period. Chapter 59, Buffalo Hunt, 1. First POV. African Cape Buffalo. Otherwise known as the Black Death due to their aggressive and unpredictable nature, which is backed up by immense strength and power. They stood proud as one of the few animals with fuck you strength. Unless a buffalo is aged, juvenile or injured, no predators in the savanna really pose a threat. In rare instances when lions do hunt them, they do so with the whole pride. Even then, the risk of hunting Cape buffalo was more than half. And right now, I am hunting these animals. Either this was the length of bravery or the height of stupidity. The decision would depend on the outcome. If I succeed, then the world will call it bravery. And if I die, the world would call it stupidity. The line between these two principles was blurry like that, they are two sides of the same coin. But keeping logic aside, I felt pretty cool about hunting the Black Death. The intention alone was enough to make my blood boil with excitement. Buffaloes are herd animals. During the wet season, they could travel in numbers of up to thousands. They cover distance slowly as their pace is decided by the weakest member of the herd. In such numbers, they were more like a natural phenomenon than an animal. They have impacts on the ecosystem as a whole as they act as natural grass mowers and promote new growth. They aerate the lands they pass, acting as natural land tillers to increase fertility. They also create gateways for other animals as they clear forests, increase the size of dying watering holes, etc. But that was beside the point. During the dry season, the herd could not exist in such huge numbers, so they splintered into small groups instead. These small groups can cover more ground and distance in search of both food and water. This makes them more vulnerable during the dry season than they were in the wet season. If lions were to hunt buffalo, this would be the best time to do so. It's almost hilarious how nature can be so coincidentally perfect. When it takes one opportunity, it gives another. It did not take long to track down one such small group of buffalo with the help of Grim. In no time, I could see the giant animals grazing in the distance. At that point, I came to a stop and observed the herd with analytical eyes. Soon enough, Grim flew down and sat beside me. Without looking away, I asked the vulture for more detailed information about the herd. That was Grim's role, he was my scout. My eyes and ears are in the sky. How many? 24 in total, Grim answered, 10 are adult females, 6 are calves, 4 are juveniles and the rest are bachelors. I think some of the females are ready to conceive because the males were very aggressive, he added. I hummed in acknowledgement. I eyed the formation of the herd and saw some thoughts put into that. So I asked, their position. The calves and juveniles, along with their weakened mothers, are at the center of the herd. They are protected from all sides. The bachelors in particular seem to be dying to prove themselves and protect the herd from dangers. Grim said. I see. I stood up and walked around the herd to get a better view of the situation. With the information provided by Grimm, I knew what to look for and I was not completely clueless. I did not bother stalking them and hindering my own view because that was useless. When the buffalo saw me, they did not even react. There was not even the tiniest flinch, as if I were completely harmless to them. I laughed. They were literally treating me like some stray cat. Are there other animals in the vicinity? I asked, to which Grimm shook his head. It would appear that this particular herd is currently out looking for food, but they are slowly moving back to the watering hole in the distance. No other animal for a mile at least, the vulture said while flapping his wings. He often did that when he was pleased with his own competence. Okay then, I said and came to a stop. The gears in my head turned and popped out a strategy. It should be mentioned that whenever this happened, I always came up with innovative or effective plans, considering my lion brain, of course. Let's hunt one of the bachelors, I said and then pulled back with narrowed eyes as if disgusted by the words. It sounded even stupider when I said it out loud. The bachelors, as in the adult males that are the biggest, most aggressive and with the longest horns. Grimm asked, to which I answered after a short pause. Yes. I see, Grimm said and nodded as if understanding my reason. He turned his head towards the herd, looked at the bachelors for a while, before he turned to me and asked again. I know it's not my place to ask since I am the servant here, but why the bachelor? Why not the calves or the subadults? On second thought, why not those two females who are clearly old and aged? Better yet, why not any other member of the herd besides the bachelors? He asked, his voice started calm but he sounded aggravated by the end. I threw on a knowing smile and looked at him before I moved again without a reply. I need not explain everything to him, he will watch and learn soon enough. This time, I moved even closer to the herd. I was starting to invade their space and immediately, eyeballs turned to me. This time, it was not a curious glance or eyes with disregard. They were looking at me, wondering what I was up to. They knew that I was close enough to launch an attack, but the fact that I was alone seemed to confuse them greatly since lions mostly hunt them together. Some even looked around in search of other lions. Before long, I got the undivided attention of the four bachelors. The rest of the herd still stared, but they were not as focused as the males. Perfect, I muttered to myself while I continued to circle them. The sun was shining hot in the sky, and a few vultures that were under Grimm circled in the sky to spread a tension of foreboding. The wind held its breath in that moment, everything was vivid and clear. Ever so slowly, I tightened the circle and chased them into a tight space. They did not try to run, but no one wanted to be close to a predator either. Until eventually, they were backed into a tight invisible circle, and they reached their limit. One of the bachelors huffed loudly, a strong gust escaping his nose. And then he charged at me. I stopped circling and turned to face him. My lips peeled themselves to show rows of sharp teeth made to tear flesh, and my ears pulled back to show aggression. Let the hunt begin. Chapter 60, Buffalo Hunt, 2. First POV. So here is the idea. Buffaloes are very defensive animals. If the natural response to danger is fight or flight, buffaloes are the kind of animals that will choose to fight every single time. They are not prey that you chase down and kill, they are prey you need to fight and kill. The act of hunting a buffalo was truly a life or death situation, it was a huge risk with a huge reward. To make things worse, they are herd animals that evolved to protect each other and fight back against any predators together. This meant that they had the advantage not only in size but also in numbers. But here is the curious thing. If you observe closely, you will notice that the reaction of the herd when a predator targets a calf is vastly different from when a predator targets an adult. In the case of the calf, the herd will react almost immediately and you will surely have angry mother buffaloes on your tail in just a few seconds. But in the case of the adult buffalo, the herd may be slower to react and only the buffaloes who are close to the victim may fight back to protect them. This was the way buffaloes evolved. Even though they protect each other, there is a priority in who to protect and who to fight for. Not any member of the herd was worth risking themselves for. The calves were the first priority as they were the future of the species, followed by the subadults and then the pregnant or fertile females. On the other hand, the old and the ill were among the least priority. This was also proven by the positioning of the herd. They let the calves, subadults and pregnant female members stay at the center of the herd so that the others could shield them in a protective circle. So although it might seem like a good strategy to target the calf or the weaker members of the herd, it was probably not the best idea when you really thought about it. After all, what's the use of targeting them when in the end, you will still have hundreds of grown adults coming for your head. Therefore, targeting the bachelors was the best bet if you don't want to be ganged up on. Of course, an injured buffalo or a member who was dying of old age would be preferable, but there was no such opportunity in the herd that I was hunting. The adult male buffaloes, otherwise referred to as the bachelors, were the strongest members of the herd. They are also responsible for protecting the herd, so you would often see them walking at the edge of the herd. They are aggressive beyond belief, the kind of aggression that would make them charge at you if you looked at them wrong. Like I said, they were strong, and that is exactly why they are the least priority to protect in the herd. Rarely would you see other buffaloes fight for the bachelor when they are targeted. The saying rang true. If you are the protector, then you have no one to protect you. The other bachelors will not help either because they are all in a competition. The herd has no king or alpha male like most pack animals do. Instead, they fight each other to establish a hierarchy, and the stronger male has a greater chance of breeding the females. They were rivals, especially when there are females that are ready to conceive. So forget about helping each other, more likely than not, they would be more than happy to see one of them die from a predator. It simply meant less competition. They biologically evolved not to care too much for males because even just one male could impregnate hundreds of females. And this is where I saw the opportunity. I would hunt the bachelors instead of any other members of the herd. I would rather try and take down one strong buffalo than face the anger of the herd by targeting valuable members. Heck, one strong buffalo was still better than two weaker buffalo. So the target of my hunting was obvious. Fiff. But as I watched one bachelor charging at me with full force and deadly intent, it became awfully clear to me that choosing the strong buffalo instead of targeting the weaker one was akin to choosing whether to burn or drown. One choice just happens to be worse in my opinion. Both absolutely sucked. Roar. I released a growl that evolved into a roar inside my chest. I could feel the ground shaking under my paws. The prey must have been nearing a ton in weight, around 4 times my size. He was heavy enough to shake the ground with each step he took towards me. My instincts came to life, it burned and told me loud and clear that taking the bull head-on was as close as it gets to certain death. I stood no chance. But ignoring all the primal instincts that have kept my species alive so far, I charged straight at death. The bull increased his speed when he saw me running towards him. He lowered his head and pointed his curved horns forward. I could tell from his body language that he was committed to his charge. My heartbeat slowed down when I saw that, and the panic in my heart slowly died down, replaced by an eerie calm. The buffalo was big and powerful, but it was also somewhat slow and predictable to my eyes. Right when we were about to clash, I utilized my superior speed and reaction time to step aside. The buffalo bulldozed right past me, his horn briefly grinding against my shoulder. Hey! I released a huge sigh of relief when the bull drove past me. He was too heavy and had too much momentum to simply stop like I did, so he continued running forward. He slowed down for a while before he came to a stop. But by that point, he had covered a very long distance, reaching even further than where I stood before. I turned to look at the rest of the herd and quickly noted their lack of reaction. No one was trying to help or continue the assault by attacking me too. I grinned at that, my prediction was true. They wouldn't gang up on me if I targeted the male. I shifted my attention back to the bull and roared at him before I ran in a curved line towards him. It was an attempt to flank him and also drive him further away from the rest of the herd. The bull bellowed before he stamped his way towards me. The sound he made was starkly different from the mooing of a cow. It sounded deeper, and if I was being completely honest, it sounded like something dinosaurs would make. Buffaloes were big and strong, but they were also quite slow when compared to other animals. It was one of the only attributes in which I had the advantage, so I was planning to abuse my speed at all costs during this hunt. I faked charging at the bull to taunt him and make him run towards me, but in reality, I was always keeping him at a distance. The first plan of this hunt was to drive the buffalo far away from the herd. I knew it was unlikely that he would get help from the rest of the herd, but I did not want to take any chances. The bull chased me for a while before he realized that it was no use running after me. The animals in this world were not smart, but they were not absolutely clueless either. He knew that I was leading him astray from the herd, and he gave up on chasing me after stomping angrily on the ground. He turned around to run back to the rest of the herd in the distance. "No you don't," I said, and this time, I ran straight to the bull. The buffalo continued to have his back to me until I was only a few meters away from him. He tried turning to face me, but by that point, it was too late. I crashed into the side of his body while he was in the middle of turning. Although I was not as big as a buffalo, a predator weighing 250 kilograms crashing on you at full power was still a force to be reckoned with. The buffalo stumbled to the side, barely catching himself from falling to the ground. If not for his low center of gravity, he would be sprawling on the ground. My weapons came out in full. Teeth and claws dug into the body of the buffalo. There was penetration, there were cuts, but not nearly enough damage considering I was putting everything I had behind my attacks. Biting him was like biting a stone. He did not have loose skin or a thick mane to protect himself from my jaw. Instead, he had this incredibly thick hide that I could barely penetrate, and under the hide were muscles that felt like steel wires wrapped around a bone. I released a growl while trying to wrestle with the behemoth. I thought I could make him fall and push him on the ground while he was off balance. But no. The buffalo won the wrestling match the moment he decided to move. I only knew this before, but now I feel it. He was 4 fucking times heavier than me. He made Baraka seem like a house cat. I hung on to his body while the bull spun around in an attempt to hook his curved horns under my belly. He bent his neck to the limit, and eventually, he got the connection that he was looking for. I felt his curved horns digging into my skin, and before I could even try to get out, he shoved his head upwards. My whole body was lifted off the ground with a violent twitch of his head. I quickly reacted and moved away from the horns while I was lifted in the air. The bull tried to throw me up once more, but my body was no longer there. The moment my paws touched the ground, I moved away from the buffalo. He immediately followed my tail and he charged from behind me. Luckily, a lion was faster than a buffalo, so I was able to keep the distance between us. When I felt he was losing his aggression and slowed down, I did the same. I kept myself a few meters away from him. He was too far to attack me, but just close enough that he would continue trying. When he was about to turn around and leave, I would launch a brief attack to ignite his anger once more. My aim was to lead him even further away from the pride while also chipping away at his limited stamina. If there was one thing a buffalo lacked other than speed, it was endurance. The game of cat and mouse continued for a while. It only came to an end when the rest of the herd was not even visible on the horizon. Not only were we moving away, but the herd was also leaving him behind. After I felt that I had driven the bull far enough from the herd, I turned around to face him. This time, my intention was no longer to play cat and mouse. The first part of the plan is done, I said to myself. Grim heard it as he flew down beside me. What's the second part of the plan? He asked. Honestly, I didn't plan that far ahead, I replied. The buffalo stood around 7 meters away from me. He was carefully observing me in his place. One look at his face was enough to know that I had pissed him off. He stomped his hoof on the ground before scraping a line and kicking up dust. Now I stood facing him. The air between us flickered due to the heat of the sun, and I slowly crouched down in a hunting position. Fiff fiff. A gust of wind left the enlarging nostrils of the bull. I guess this was it. I either kill this behemoth or die fucking trying. This second life of mine was an extra, and I refused to live it without pride and greatness. My brain worked to put together all the strategies that I'd thought of before the start of the hunt. It was completely different to think during that time and now. In this intense situation, it was hard to even remember my plans. The most obvious weakness of the buffalo was the eye. But the problem was that the eyes were attached to the head, which was the most dangerous part of the buffalo. The huge horns right above the eyes was a truly demotivating sight. Not just the horns, but the eyes were probably protected by natural reflexes as well. Buffaloes clashed their heads to fight after all. If they didn't have an insane reflex to protect their eye, then they would become blind very often. The other weakness that I could think of was the underbelly, the inner thighs and the throat. But how the heck was I going to damage those when the beast in front of me was designed to be a living tank? And of course, the balls were a solid target as well, but I would probably get kicked straight to heaven if I ever got behind the buffalo. I did not get a chance to think for long as my prey finally burst into action. He exploded out, muscles rippling with raw strength and power. You could hardly imagine stopping him when you watch him charge. In the end, there was no way of winning this fight unharmed. I had to get comfortable with the idea that I was going to pay a price for what I was trying to achieve. It was my first time hunting a buffalo, and I had no one to teach me how to do this correctly. So I had to figure it out myself and accept the fact that I was going to get hurt doing so. I erupted into a sprint when I saw the buffalo reach the halfway point. I also had raw explosive power when I moved, albeit I did not have the weight to generate force as much as he did. When we were about to collide, I leapt into the air. A guttural roar left my throat, and my fangs and claws were bared. We collided. It was not even a question of who won the collision. I felt the air knocked out of my lungs, and my chest felt absolutely numb. But my strategy of tiring the buffalo and driving him away from the herd worked wonders, as the clash was not as painful as I thought it would be. My paws were off the ground when the bull crashed his head into my chest. So instead of taking the full brunt of the force, my body yielded and rode along with the force. This made the impact much more bearable, but in return I was being thrust forward and the buffalo continued charging. The claws on my right paw dug into his shoulders so that I could hang onto his body. In the meantime, my left paw found a target on his face. My claws drew 4 red lines down his face and onto his eyes. The buffalo released a bellowing scream before he went into berserk mode. His neck twisted and his head burst forth. I felt myself being ragdolled while I hung onto his body. The buffalo raised its head once more, nearly throwing me off before he slammed me on the ground. My back made an impact on the ground, and before I could groan, I felt immense weight on my chest. I roared in pain as the bull started crushing me between his head and the ground. My back grinned against the rough earth and a huge pressure was on my chest. The buffalo continued raising the ground with my body for a few meters before he came to a stop. His breathing was loud and heavy, like the cooling of an overheated engine. His head continued pinning me to the ground, but half of his face was bloody with 4 lines cutting diagonally. One of his eyes was gouged out and hung loosely by the optic nerve. We stayed in that position for a few seconds. I was occupied with taking in the current state of my body, and I was quite shocked at the state I was in. I felt surprisingly okay. In the earlier stages of my life, I was always tested to the limit, so I knew just how strong and powerful I was. I knew exactly where I stood. My fight with Scar, along with the hyenas, and then my battle with Roku are examples of events that showed me my current limits. But all those things were 6 months ago. I haven't had the chance to test my limits since then, and the only real challenge so far was my short fight with the Bailai brothers. It was a good way to know how much progress I had made during the passing months, but that brief confrontation did not show nearly enough. I think my mind had not caught up to just how strong my body became. All those trainings I did, and all the food I forced myself to eat. They bore results which I did not truly appreciate till now. Because you know what? I just found out I could really take a fucking beating. Got you, I said with a savage grin. The buffalo tried to pull away, but I grabbed him with my claws. I did not allow him to escape from my grasp and hugged him tightly. I opened my mouth as wide as I can and bite down on the face of the buffalo. Adrenaline flooded my body and I could feel the powerful beat of my heart. I had never felt so strong before. My body flexed, the result of all my hard work so far, and my mind stopped doubting my body. It was at this moment that I was certain. I was going to have a good meal tonight.
Thanks for listening.